Please rise for Mayor Karen Vernon.
Good evening, everyone. It's now 6:30 p.m. and I'll declare this ordinary council meeting of the town of Victoria Park is open. I'd like to invite Councillor Cruiser to read the acknowledgement of country.
Nangani Jerapani Wajak, Nunga Bojak, Yakani Nija Bilya Baruk. I'm honoured to be standing on Wajak Noongar country on the banks of the Swan River. Nangani Kadich Noongar Murt, Kenny Kadak Nija Wajak Noongar Boja. Nangani Kadich Nija Noongar Bodia Kora, Yeye Borda, Balapani Murich, Noongar Kadachin Murt, Where Boja Yeye. I acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and respect past, present and emerging leaders, their continuing cultural heritage, beliefs and relationship with the land, which continues to be important today. Nangani Yunga Balapani Nunga Berdia Wurt Murt Nija Boja. I thank them for the contribution made to life in the town of Victoria Park and to this region.
Thanks, Councillor Cruiser. Please be seated. Item 2 on the agenda is announcements from the presiding member. 2.1, recording and live streaming of proceedings. In accordance with clause 39 of the town's meeting procedures local law 2019, as the presiding member, I hereby give my permission for the administration to record proceedings of this meeting. It follows that I do not give other persons permission to record this meeting. The meeting is also being live streamed on the town's website. A warm welcome to those who are joining us tonight on live streaming. By being present at this meeting, members of the public consent to the possibility that their image and voice may be live streamed to the public. Recordings are also made available on the town's website following the meeting. 2.2, public statement, question time and public statement time. There are guidelines that need to be adhered to in our council meetings, and during question and statement time, people speaking are not to personalise any questions or statements about elected members, town staff, or use any possible defamatory remarks. In accordance with clause 40 of the meeting procedures local law, a person addressing the council shall extend due courtesy and respect to the council and the processes under which it operates, and shall comply with any direction by the presiding member. A person present at or observing a meeting shall not create a disturbance at a meeting by interrupting or interfering with the proceedings, whether by expressing approval or dissent, by conversing or by any other means. When the presiding member speaks during public question time or public statement time, any person then speaking is to immediately stop, and every person present is to preserve strict silence so that the presiding member may be heard without interruption. As per my usual practice, there is a limit of 3 questions per person and 2 minutes allocated for statements. If, however, there are insufficient members of the public who wish to ask questions, we can be a little bit more generous with the number of questions and the time for making statements. 2.3, no adverse reflection in accordance with clause 56, the meeting procedures local law. Both elected members and the public when speaking are not to reflect adversely on the character or actions of elected members or employees. Item 2.5 is the Mayor's report. I'll begin with announcements from myself as the presiding member. Firstly, a congratulations to our Aqualife staff members Norelle and Drew, who each received a Gold Star Bravery Award from the Royal Lifesaving Society of WA last month in recognition of their courage and dedication in providing emergency life-saving first aid to a pool patron who was drowning earlier this year. We're very proud to have them on the town's team. Also, on behalf of Council, our sincere thanks to the town on the lovely Respectful Remembrance Day commemoration that was held on the 11th of November in Memorial Gardens, with special mention made of the town staff member Nicola Tompkins for her great work in leading the organisation of the event, and to Rosemary Retorto, our local area historian, for her work featuring the story of local hero Private Leslie Edward Plummer. And finally, on behalf of Council, a huge congratulations, Mr Acting CEO, to you and the town's team for delivering another hugely successful Summer Street party that was held last weekend on Saturday the 16th of November. Thousands of locals and visitors alike packed Albany Highway in East Victoria Park to enjoy the live music, entertainment, children's activities, market stalls, food vendors and local businesses who joined in the fun. Thanks need to go to our major partners for the event, John Hughes and the Balmoral Hotel, our premier partner, Hawaiian's Park Centre, and our community partner, Fusion Finance Group, who all contributed to the success of this annual event. It goes from strength to strength every year, and we would be grateful if you could pass on our special thanks and mention for Marianne Gardner from the town's events team for organising and managing this event, and a thanks to and shout out for all the town staff who helped out over the whole weekend get ready for this signature community event. The Mayor's report from the last Ordinary Council meeting will be published in the minutes. Because of its length and the number of items that are in it, I just want to point out a couple of items and the rest of it will be published in the minutes. On the 19th of October, I joined Deputy Mayor Ife and Councillors Cruiser, Devereux, Rosa and Miles, the Acting CEO, Mr Doy, a number of town staff and community members for a community bike roll from Lathlane through to Carlisle to mark the completion of Stage 2 of the protected bicycle lanes on Archer Street. The Honourable Chris Tallentire, MLA, joined in the ride and also spoke on behalf of the Premier of Western Australia about the WA Government's investment in cycling infrastructure and their great delight in the progress of the protected bicycle lanes. The community bike ride was followed by a morning of family-friendly activities and festivities at the Archer Street car park, and we thank Cafe Bella Rosa for their support of the event. Would also like to indicate that since the last council meeting, I have attended, along with the acting CEO, both meetings of the South East Corridor Councils Alliance and the Perth Inner City Group. In both of those meetings, we planned our advocacy priority campaigns for the 2025 state and federal election on behalf of both of those regional alliances that we are a part of. And on the 30th of October, the acting CEO and myself were invited by Black Oak to attend the groundbreaking ceremony at Edward Mellon House, where we were shown the restoration work that had already commenced on both the heritage-listed building and the associated neighbouring Mildred Creek Centre buildings, which is already shaping up to be something that we will all be delighted to see completed, and they have assured us they'll be completed by the end of 2025. So very, very exciting for us. And finally, I wanted to say that I was delighted on the 13th of November to be invited to a luncheon hosted by the City of Gosnells to meet the new Governor-General of Australia, the Honourable Sam Mostyn AC, in her first official visit to Western Australia since she was appointed on the 1st of July 2024. It was a wonderful opportunity to meet and talk with Her Excellency and introduce her to the town of Victoria Park and also the collaborative work that we do with the South East Corridor Councils Alliance. So they're just a small snapshot of the items that are in the Mayor's report. We'll move on to item 3 on the agenda, which is attendance. We have all elected members in attendance, save for Councillor Minson, who is on statutory leave. There are a number of members of the town's administration who are present, led by the acting CEO, Mr Doy. We have no one on approved leave of absence. Item 4 on the agenda is declarations of interest. Mr Acting CEO, do we have any declarations of interest, please?
We do. Thank you, Mayor Vernon. With regard to item 11.2, all elected members in attendance declare the following financial interest. The reason is if council decides to proceed with superannuation for elected members, then this will create a financial gain or benefit for me. And then we also have a declaration of interest for item 17.1 from Councillor Peter Devereux. It's an impartiality interest. The reason is I am nominated as an additional councillor for the working group and bring personal experience and university experience in the area of integrated transport. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr Doy. We'll then move on to the next item on the agenda, which is item 5, which is public question time, which I will now open at 6:39 p.m. For those who asked questions at the agenda briefing forum held on the 5th of November of this year, any questions that were taken on notice, the response to those questions is contained in tonight's agenda. We'll now move to public question time itself. I have been asked to ask a question on behalf of Herb Rowe from Carlisle, who was unable at the last moment to attend tonight's meeting. So I'm going to ask these two questions on his behalf. The first question is, what is Council doing about cat control? It is becoming critical to make the change for cats to be retained inside at all times. It's quite a job and will take a lot of work, so it would be good to start sooner rather than later. Going to direct the question about what Council is doing about cat control to the Chief Financial Officer, Mr Old.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll have to take that on notice and get the Ranger team to give me advice.
Right, thank you. Mr Old will take that on notice. The second question from Mr Rowe, when is something going to be done about the traffic signals on the corner of Miller Street and Shepparton Road and the right-hand turn onto Shepparton Road? Western Power has advised they have approved this, but nothing has happened. So I'll direct that second question to the Chief Operations Officer, Ms Adams.
Thank you, through the Chair. So the traffic signals work is still being scheduled. So whilst we have some approvals from some of the statutory authorities and service authorities, there is still the scheduling to be done. So officially I'll take that on notice so we can provide a more comprehensive answer.
Thank you, Ms Adams. We'll take that on notice. If Mr Rowe is able to either join us tonight on live streaming or watch the recording, there will be an answer coming out to you that's been taken on notice. So the next person is Tim Cross. I understand, Mr Cross, you're here in person, so if you'd like to come forward. I am aware of your pre-submitted questions, but generally speaking, if people are present in person, we invite them to come forward and ask their questions. If you could just switch the microphone on, and we do require you to state your name and suburb only. It's just on the base pad, yeah, and it should light up red when you're ready. So we need you to state your name.
My name's, sorry.
And your suburb, that's all right.
Yeah, Timothy Cross, and I live in East Victoria Park.
All right, thank you. Now, I do note, I have been advised that you pre-submitted 5 questions.
Yeah, I've kind of
If you're
got
able,
it to 2.
if you're able to identify the 3 most significant of your questions, I will take the other 2 on notice. So if you just let me know which numbered questions you want to ask, we'll get you the answers to the rest subsequently.
They're kind of like I've rewritten them slightly, if that's okay. It's just that I had time to think about what I actually wrote.
Absolutely, they're
Yep,
your
and
questions.
Funnily enough, it's actually the questions are kind of related to that last question you had about Miller Street and Shepparton Road. So, should I start?
Whenever
Okay.
you are ready, Mr
Okay.
Cross.
The issue which I've come about is actually the approval of a childcare centre on 184 Shepparton Road, which is currently an ex-training centre. The residents only found out about it, that the approval had actually been approved back in May when the building fences went up about 2.5 weeks ago. And that was the first indication that this has been approved. And so I phoned up first thing Monday morning because the builder fences went up about 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, so it was a bit late. And the plaintiff said, sorry, we were meant to send a letter in May, but we didn't. So it kind of like it was a real kick in the guts for the residents for the lane, and we have been talking, so that's what my questions are about. So in relation to the decision by the Town of Victoria Park to approve a childcare centre at 184A Shepparton Road, it's a usual practice that I noticed that 11 of the 12 responses was negative, so that's about 92%. Is that usual for that to be, that negative feedback to be ignored? And
Right.
what,
Sorry, what I'm going to do, Mr Cross, is I'm going to direct each of your questions individually for an answer because the answer you get may inform the next question that you want to ask. So I'm going to direct that to our Chief Community Planner, Ms Martin Good.
Through the chair, if I can just clarify, all public submissions are considered, so no public submissions are ignored. Certainly in this instance, the objections about traffic were seriously considered and balanced against the traffic impact assessment that was provided by the applicant that was actually also reviewed by the town's design team.
Okay.
Thanks, Ms Martin Good. Mr Cross, you have another question?
So why did the consideration process take account particularly the impact of less than 10% increase of traffic on Boulder and Carnarvon streets, but ignored the potential 500% increase of traffic on Butler Lane? By 500%, the reason I came to that is because currently the information we're given is about 30 vehicle movements a day up and down Butler Lane. If you have an 80 plus childcare centre plus staff, that's say 90 vehicles a day coming in and 90 vehicles going out, so that's 180, so that's how I came to 500%.
All right, I'm going to direct that question to Ms Martin Good.
Through the chair, that would be a technical engineering question, so I'd need to take that on notice.
So, Mr Cross, when we have to take questions on notice, it means that we're going to get a written answer prepared for you that will speak to the right staff members and will be more fulsome than anything we could offer you tonight.
Yep.
So we'll take that question on notice. Your next question?
And the final question, I'm just trying to avoid emotional language, that's all. And so why were residents only told about the approval basically 5 months post the event?
I'll direct that to Ms Martin Good.
Through the chair, that was an administrative error on our behalf, and we certainly sincerely apologise for that error.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much, Mr Cross, for coming along. Now, I also have a number of members of the public gallery who have registered to ask questions as well. First on the list, Oscar Foster. Please come forward, state your name and your suburb.
Oscar Foster, Eastwick Park. Does the town charge a credit card surcharge when people use the town's parking machines?
Direct that question to the Chief Financial Officer, Mr Old.
The town has charged that surcharge in the past. However, following some advice, we have now reversed that and not doing that until the next budget adoption when it will be for council consideration.
Next question, Mr Foster.
I was told by someone that they were charged a 10% surcharge. Would that be right?
It's a little bit hard for us to say what someone else said was right or not. Mr Old, have we charged at a rate of 10% in the past?
I highly doubt it. It would probably be in the range of 1% or something like that, which the bank would charge us, but I can confirm those details, so I'll formally take that on notice.
We'll take that on notice. Mr Foster, you have another question?
Does the money from people's credit cards go straight into the town's bank account or does it go into the contractor's account?
Mr Old?
The payments that we take for any facility go through payment gateways, so that will be either the contractor and or the bank. So the bank has secure access, has secure the credit card data, so it does not go directly into the town's bank on the minute it happens. It does get held through the payment clearinghouse.
Your final question, Mr Foster? Oh, no, that was your third question. All right, thank you. Appreciate that. Next on the list, Vince Maxwell. Please come forward, state your name and your suburb.
Good evening, Mayor and Councillors. Vince Maxwell from Victoria Park. I understand that all elected members were provided with information from the Port Hedland Council about DNA contamination found in mRNA COVID vaccines. Will you, Mayor, be proposing a notice of motion to support Port Hedland's call for these mRNA vaccines to be halted until this matter is investigated?
No. Next question.
I bought shares in a funeral business listed on the ASX, Propel Funeral Partners, and the share price has increased by over 28% in the last 2 years, which demonstrates the elevated level of demand for funeral services. Since the COVID-19 vaccine rollout in Western Australia, the state's mortality rate has reportedly increased by over 11.7%. People are getting very sick and dying right here in Vic Park. We know the town spends a lot of money monitoring the health of trees in the town, but in regards to people, what measures has the town got in place to understand and address any potential impact on our community's health?
Any potential impact of what, Mr Maxwell, on the community's health?
On anything that might impact the community's health, that might explain the increased level of death in the town.
I don't really understand your question, Mr Maxwell. You're talking about what you understand to be a statistical increase in the number of deaths in Australia, which you then say relates to an increase in the deaths in the town of Victoria Park's population, and you want to know what measures the town is taking to deal with people's individual health. Is that what you're asking me?
I want to know what measures the town has in place to understand and address any potential impact on their community's health. Does the town have any way of monitoring community health for a start?
I'm going to address that, refer that to Ms Martin Good.
Through the Chair, the town's relatively recently adopted public health and wellbeing strategy does have measures in there that looks at some of the main priorities relating to mortality and health in the town, and it does have actions in that strategy relating to those things generally. So if Mr Maxwell is interested in that particular strategy, he can refer to that on the town's website.
Your next question, Mr Maxwell.
The report that you provided on DNA contamination has been signed by 50 well-credentialed health experts, scientists and academics. If this report said that there was unacceptably high levels of lead in the Victoria Park drinking water, would you ask the government to investigate?
I don't know the report that you're talking about, Mr Maxwell, so...
The one that you provided by Port Hedland Council.
I'm not aware of any report provided to me.
Really?
Sorry. That's my position. So I got an email from someone who is an elected member at the Council of Port Hedland informing me that some letter or something would be coming my way. I don't have any report I can point to, but I'm also not of the view that I'm going to comment on a report written by somebody that is not a Town of Victoria Park staff member, because I wouldn't be in any way, shape or form, I think, able to make comments on someone else's report just off the cuff. So I'm not in a position to answer your question, Mr Maxwell, and that is your 3 questions. So thank you for coming along this evening to ask questions. Next on the list, Sam Zammit. Please come forward, state your name and suburb.
Good evening, everyone. Sam Zammit. Lady Mayor, I've asked you about this many times. Down in the gallery, you can't hear half of your speakers. You come over relatively clear, but why can't the people that speak make sure that the microphone is in front of their mouth?
Mr Zammit, we have just finished installing new equipment in the chamber, but we have not replaced the microphones because our technician who is present tonight assures us that our microphones are actually very good quality. I am sorry that if you are unable to hear some people speaking in the back row, my suggestion to you is that you willingly take a seat in the front row, and that may improve your ability to hear certain speakers. But everyone here present has heard what you've had to say, and I'm sure they'll make their best endeavours to ensure that everyone can hear them when they speak tonight.
Lady Mayor, they hear what I say because I speak in front of and clearly in front of the microphone. some of your speakers speak like the microphone's over here and they speak here. It's not a...
Mr Zammit,
Okay,
I have
thank
just
you.
said to you that everyone has heard what you've said, and I'm sure they'll do their very best.
It's not
to
about me.
speak. Mr Zammit, move on to your next question, please.
Okay, my first question. I see Councillor Minson is still on maternity leave.
Councillor Minson is not on maternity leave.
He's not.
Mr Zammit, maternity leave has a very specific meaning. Councillor Minson is on statutory parenting leave under the Local Government Act. Do you actually have a question related to that statement?
Oh, can I finish the question then?
Please get to the question. Thank you.
Gee. Are we still paying him while he isn't here working as a councillor?
I'm not in a position to answer that question, but the list of payments made, I think, for elected members that comes in every monthly report for ordinary council meeting would set out the payments that are made to elected members. I'm not sure if anyone is in a position to advise if his monthly allowances are being made. We'll take that on notice, Mr Zammit.
Thank you.
But the elected member allowances are paid monthly and the payments do appear in the list of payments made, which is an item on tonight's agenda. But it's a long list of payments, so we'll go through it and confirm for you. Your next question?
I see in the payment summary that a company called Oven Sparkle were paid the sum of $3,267. Is this the same person that was given an enforcement letter to remove the playground equipment from the verge in Teague Street?
So, Mr Zammit, firstly, we don't discuss details about third persons in council meetings without their permission. So you've referred to a company which receives an amount of money for services rendered to the town. Now you've been talking about somebody else who you say is related. That's not a question that we're going to answer.
I only referred to the company called Oven Sparkle.
I know, but you then asked, you didn't ask about Oven Sparkle, you asked, is this the person to whom some enforcement notice was issued? And Oven Sparkle is not a person. It's clearly a company business. So not going to answer questions about enforcement.
Well, I can rephrase it for you.
Mr Zammit, I'll make it clear to you, I'm not going to answer questions about enforcement notices that may or may not have been issued by the town of Victoria Park to another person other than you.
I didn't mention a person.
Mr Zammit, just
I
move,
mentioned the street.
Mr Zammit, move on to your next
You don't want to
question.
answer me, okay.
Move on to your next question, please. And that's your last question.
For years, we've had major problems with the Park Centre parking. Now, the last time I inquired about this, I was told that the bays that have been assigned to or being used by the Park Centre are the correct amount. Now, as a part-time historian of this town, I know what's gone on, and when they expanded Coles store there, they did away with quite a lot of parking bays. Now, for people that shop there on Saturday morning, every time I go there Saturday morning, I have to go round and round and round. By the time I'm finished, I'm that dizzy I've got to go home, so I can't get a parking bay. Now, it's about time that we got dinkum about this firm, about the Park Centre management, and delved into this and found out that they haven't got enough parking bays. Now they're going to, we could suggest that they go multi-storey for a parking area, or help them in some other way, or it's really their problem which they're not worried about. Now, also, the last time I inquired about this, you handed the question to our operations manager, and she told me that when that shopping centre was opened, the parking requirements were different to what they are today. Now, that is just not so. That's not true.
So what's your question, Mr Zammit? Do you want to know if
Can we
we are
eliminate?
going to
Yeah.
look into that?
can we look into that, please, and do something positive about it?
All right,
Like-
so I'm going to direct that question in the first instance actually to our Chief Community Planner. As a matter of planning law, what is the position with regards to the Park Centre's development approval regarding the number of parking bays it must have? And I appreciate you've put on the spot, Ms Martin Good, so if it needs to be taken on notice so we can get an accurate answer for Mr Zammit, we'll do that. Ms Martin Good?
Through the Chair, from a compliance perspective, one would hope that the planning approval will have a condition that requires a certain number of car bays to be provided. If we then find that those exact number of car bays have been provided, then there is no action that the town is required to take from a planning compliance perspective.
So what we will do, Mr Zammit, for you is I'm going to take your question on notice about the number of car bays at the Park Centre shopping centre, and that will give the town an opportunity to have its staff look into the development approval when the Park Centre was originally built and any more recent development applications that have been approved as to the number of car bays that should be there, and you'll be able to get that notice and answer in writing. Okay? So we will need to look back on it because it is historical information we'll need to check up on.
If you wish to involve me in any information that I can bring you to help make your effort a bit easier, they've done away with parking bays underneath Kmart because they got that car wash, and they've done away the full width of Coles. They expanded it right out to the boundary, and they've done away with all those parking bays.
Well, Mr Zammit, as I say, both those things you've alluded to require development applications and approvals to have been granted. So when the town staff do the research about the previous approvals granted for the Park Centre, Ms Martin Good has heard your queries and we'll look at what was approved originally and what's been approved for any changes since then and let you know if there is compliance or not and what the town proposes to do about that. All right?
A very positive answer. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr Zammit. Appreciate that. Now, is there anyone else in the public gallery who wishes to ask questions? Please come forward. You will need to state your name and your suburb as required by our meeting procedures local law.
My name is Charlie Brown and I live in Victoria Park. Okay, again, there's a one paragraph context and then a question. So, also, Mayor and Council, thank you for, I heard the Christmas lights are coming. Is that true, Mayor?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
The Christmas lights installation, I understand,
Yes.
begins this week, but will continue over the next, I think, 10 days. It will take some time to put all of the Christmas decorations up, and they do include overhead lights.
Yes, beautiful, thank you. I am so happy about that. Thank you, everyone.
Me too.
Okay, so that's as of the last time I was here, I referred to different cultures being represented in Victoria Park, which is a great thing, and the Vic Park Council does very well in representing these people. We have Ramadan, as I stated before, Ramadan celebrated by Muslims, Chinese New Year celebrated by the Chinese, Harmony Week, National Reconciliation Week, NAIDOC Week, and Welcome to Country for Aboriginals. We also have Pride Month and pool parties for LGBTQ, as well as Christians who celebrate Easter and Christmas, and Jews who celebrate Happy Hanukkah Day. With all these diverse communities actively supported in Victoria Park, why then is the LGBTQ and the Aboriginal flag the only two flags flown above the Victoria Park Council?
Look, thanks for your question. It isn't actually correct. There are other flags that do get put up on the flagpole from time to time. One of those will be coming in a couple of weeks, which is the flag for International Day of People with Disability. In terms of the flying of flags for potentially other cultures, we, in my time on council, have not, to the best of my knowledge, received a request from, say, people from China who wish to see some flag flown on their behalf, nor do I recall any other cultural group requesting a specific flag to be flown. But whether flags are flown or not are generally matters determined by the town's administration upon request. I think, Ms Martin Good, that's correct, isn't it? Yeah, so if we get requests from people to fly those flags for particular reasons, then we'll do so. We tend to fly commemorative flags if they are available to us and they tie in with activities of the town, such as when it is NAIDOC week, when it is National Reconciliation Week. We do have flags that are available to the town to acquire for those purposes, and obviously the rainbow flag flies at the moment because in Western Australia this is Pride Month, and the town will be featuring a number of events to celebrate Pride Month. So not everything that we celebrate though, Ms Brown actually has a commemorative flag that we can fly. Do you have another question?
So if we brought to you, so if I approached, say, for example, the Jewish community or the Christian community or a Buddhist community or whatever, and they wanted a flag to be flown above our town council, as is the LGBTQ and the Aboriginal flag, you would consider and do that? Is that an option?
Well, it will be a matter to be considered by the town staff, but in relation to the Aboriginal flag, that is a flag that's required to be flown under the Commonwealth direction for the flying of flags at public buildings. So we're required to fly the Australian national flag. We're also required to fly the Aboriginal flag. We are now, thanks to efforts by a local community member for us to add to the number of our flagpoles, which we did, we're now required to fly the Torres Strait Islander flag as well, the Western Australian flag, and of course the Town of Victoria Park's flag. So all I can say is that if somebody wants to make a request for a flag to be flown, it'll need to be submitted to the town staff and it will be assessed by them, and I can't answer that question on their behalf until they see the application.
Okay, so you're not required to fly a LGBTQ flag above Victoria Park Town Council?
We don't have any requirements under the Commonwealth requirements for the flying of flags at public buildings to fly anything other than the flags that I mentioned to you, but that's actually a direction that you can find by searching generally on the internet for that full details of that requirement, and it actually lists the order of flags that must be flown and the order in which they must be flown.
Okay.
So I can't answer that question any further. Do you have a final question?
No, just to outline the fact, I'm looking at from a viewpoint of inclusiveness, and it's not very inclusive. I'm looking at it as a point of divisiveness, and it's not. It is very divisive, and it's also discriminatory as well. Like if you have just the LGBTQ flag up there, it's kind of a bit.
Well,
it's excluding the others. It's not fair.
At this point in time, this is only public question time, not public statement time.
Okay.
And I've already explained to you, if other groups wish to have their flags flown, they'll need to make a proper application to the town.
All right. Thank
All
you
right.
very much.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from members of the public? No, there being no other questions, I will close public question time at 7:07 p.m. We now move on to item 6 on the agenda, which is public statement time, which I now open at 7:07 p.m. Mr. Cross, would you like to come forward and make your statement?
I was new to the process, I was a bit confused, so it doesn't need to be said.
You're more than welcome if you want to come forward and make a statement. No? All right, okay. Thank you. Next on the list, Vince Maxwell, please come forward.
Thanks, Mayor. If a credible source told us there is lead contamination in our drinking water, it would be expected that this council would contact the government without delay to ask questions and seek clarification. I urge this council to call upon the state and federal governments to suspend the use of mRNA vaccines until further research clarifies certain risks that have come to light. By design, these novel vaccines use lipid nanoparticles to deliver mRNA directly into our cells. However, recent reports suggest that these nanoparticles may also carry DNA contamination into the cell, which could pose serious health risks. Each dose contains billions of these nanoparticles, capable of affecting cells throughout the body, including in vital organs like the heart and brain. A lot more people are dying, a lot more women are suffering miscarriages, and a lot more people are falling ill with chronic diseases without explanation. I personally know of several individuals in our community who have experienced sudden and severe health events, including a fit and healthy 42-year-old who suffered a fatal heart attack at work. The TGA have recently issued a statement that their testing confirms there is DNA contamination, but they have said don't worry about it. Their statement is akin to saying there's lead poisoning in our water, but don't worry about it. The TGA's position is predictable when you consider that they are a captured agency deriving 96% of their funding from drug companies. Alarmingly, these drug companies are now adapting childhood vaccines to the same mRNA technology, which I believe poses further risks, particularly to our children. The full extent of the damage to our human DNA may not be evident for years. Everyone who has been injected with this product is a potential ticking time bomb. This issue is far more important than superannuation. It's far more important than playgrounds on verges, and it only takes one of you councillors to move a notice of motion. Do it for your community, do it for your family, or do it for yourself. Call
Thanks,
to
Mr.
suspend the use of
Maxwell.
mRNA
Mr.
vaccines.
Maxwell, that is your 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you for your...
Next on the list, Sam Zammit for a public statement.
You should have given me a half-hour notice, I'd be there.
I'll remember that for next time, Mr. Zammit, but please take your time. Don't rush.
Can't believe this was the young bloke that started off in this town at the age of 6. Those were the days, my friend. I've raised this, Sam Zammit, I've raised this matter with you before, and you've pointed to our operations manager about cleaning the drains outside on the opposite side of the road from my place. Well, finally they did it. It only took 2 years, but we got there. We've now got a new street, Lady Mayor. We've got a new street. I remember it when I moved in there at the age of 8. It was half the size. The curbing was made out of wood. And what it is today is an absolute tops. You've given us new bitumen. The road is twice the width, with a bit of what you'd call it, help from me. We've got new curbing. And to top it off, we've got underground power, which I have to admit and have to swallow my pride, and I was not really that interested in where our power came from, but I'm tell you what, I am just overwhelmed at what underground power has given us. It has given us a light from one end of my street to the other, and it's about, oh look, I'm only guessing about, it's well over 1 kilometre long. And not only for beauty, with those beautiful poles and the lights, a job well done. You only missed one item, Lady Mayor.
Did we forget to install a coffee maker for you, Mr. Zammit? What's the one item we missed?
All I'm asking for is just a little plaque that self-elected mayor lives at this address.
You want a plaque for the Mayor of Alva Street?
Please, self-elected. Don't forget that. That's important.
That is important. I'll give that due consideration for future budget discussions, Mr. Zammit.
I'm expecting, and you may want to consider putting it in my Christmas hamper. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Zammit. Always a pleasure. Are there any other statements from members of the public? No, there being no other statements. On that basis, I will declare public statement time is closed at 7:13 p.m. Thank you. Now continuing with the rest of the business in the agenda. Item 7 is confirmation of minutes and receipt of notes from any agenda briefing forum. The recommendation is that Council 1 confirms the minutes of the ordinary council meeting held on 15 October 2024. 2 receives the minutes of the special council meeting held on 22 October 2024. 3, receives the notes of the agenda briefing forum held on 5 November 2024. 4, receives the notes of the Mandira Advisory Group meeting held on 4 November 2024. 5, receives the minutes of the Urban Forest Strategy Implementation Working Group meeting held on 23 October 2024. Can I seek a mover and a seconder, please, for the officer's recommendation, noting that hopefully our technology is working tonight and we're able to do our electronic moving and voting. Moved Deputy Mayor Ife, seconded Councillor Cruiser. That will refresh on the screen in a moment. Is there any dissent? No, there being no dissent, declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 8 is presentation of minutes from external bodies. The recommendation is that Council 1 receives the minutes of the Catalina Regional Council meeting held on 15 August 2024. 2, receives the minutes of Catalina Regional Council's Special Council meeting held on 19 September 2024. Can I seek a mover and seconder, please? Moved Councillor Hamer, seconded myself, Mayor Vernon. Is there any dissent? No. There being no dissent, declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 9 is presentations. 9.1, petitions, we have none. 9.2, presentations, we have none. 9.3, deputations. We do have, elected members, a request to present a deputation, and as per our meeting procedures local law, that matter needs to be presented to Council for a resolution to receive the deputation. So the recommendation is that Council receives a deputation from Mr Andrew Wilkinson in relation to item 13.2, which is TVP 2416, the Archer Mint Streetscape and Black Spot Funded Intersections Tender Report. I'm happy to move the recommendation that we receive the deputation. Can I seek a seconder, please? Seconded Deputy Mayor Ife. Is there any dissent? No, there being no dissent, declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Mr Wilkinson, if you'd like to come forward to the microphone and commence when you're ready. Understand you've got a PowerPoint presentation for us, is that right?
That is correct, thank you.
Okay, I'm hoping that's been uploaded with the staff. Please let us know if you encounter any difficulties. I know that's a bit difficult because you try to look up from where you are, which might make it challenging, but hopefully it all goes according to plan. You do have a period of 10 minutes under our meeting procedures local law, so whenever you're ready, you may get started.
Thank you. I need to rush. So basically what the matter before you, agenda item 30.2, I'm asking you to, there's 3 different works that are proposed along the Mint Archer corridor. I'm suggesting that 2 of those 3 locations, the design isn't perfect, but it's suitable to go ahead. The 3rd location, I'm suggesting that you don't go ahead, that instead you consider an alternative course of action. There we go, to redirect some of that funding towards alternative works along that corridor that may be safer, cheaper and quicker, and enable the upgrade of the entire corridor to take place potentially before the railway line reopens next year. So this is the structure of my presentation. So really, you've already done an upgrade in the Carlisle Town Centre. Really frustrating. The objectives that the council set at the time, the first 6 objectives were all about improving transport safety and the pedestrian experience. This was the concept design. So this is the roundabout at where the Turkish place is and the bottle shop. So you can see that there's very strong traffic calming on all 4 sides of that roundabout. You have to slow the cars down to make that safe for pedestrians. This was the final design that was actually built. You can see it's fundamentally different. This is a great mystery to me why that change in the design occurred. This is the built outcome. This was a massive missed opportunity. You can actually quantify what has happened here. So on the town's website, it shows a reduction in average speeds of 6.6%. What does that actually mean? You can actually go, you have a really good function on your website called Intramaps. You can go and get all the traffic count data for the town, including in this exact location where the town centre upgrade occurred. So the key metrics are it's 10,500 vehicles per day, an average speed of 45 kilometres an hour. So you take 6.6% off that and you reduce the average speed to 42 kilometres an hour. To put that in context, the bottom row here shows that if a person's hit by a car, the chance of death is 90%, so a 10% chance of survival, and obviously reduces at lower speeds. So in effective terms, the safety outcome of these works are to reduce the chance of death from 2/3 to a half. The guidelines are pretty clear. At these sort of vehicle speeds and volumes, you really want to be focusing on protected lanes. You're obviously doing that on the rest of the corridor, but not in this location. I think you could, but I'm very much a pragmatist. I don't think this community is ready to have that debate. It comes down to a trade-off between the loss of convenience for the customers of those small businesses versus the safety. But effectively, it's showing that if you're not going to put in the protected bike lanes, you really have to slow down the speeds. So the current proposed works. So again, coming back to the concept design, Mars Street, where the bike lanes currently end, this is the concept design. You can see very strong traffic calming on 3 of the 4 sides. This is the design that was put in the agenda papers for this meeting. I can't interpret that. Maybe those 2 lines on the 3 sides are traffic calming, so effectively you're changing the speeds. If that is, that's good. The line markings aren't very clear, so that does assist. But remember, you're spending $1.2 million. So the safety outcome of that $1.2 million is the equivalent of speed bumps on all those 3 sides. So let's look at the full project scope. You're actually updating the entire block. So what are you actually doing for that $1.2 million? You're going to be digging up the road, lifting it by a few inches so it's flush with the curb, maybe reducing the road width, but it's still fundamentally a road without the sort of traffic calming and envisaging of a safer place. You can see in contrast the other 2 locations where it is pretty clear that there is high quality traffic calming that is being proposed. Can I please get a bit of extra time because of the clicker? So
Still have plenty of time.
Just some observations on the council paper. The culture survey was redacted. I don't believe that's commercial in confidence. That would be interesting to see those results. There's a typo there. Learnings from past projects. So my take on this is that the staff and the road construction company, in an era of high cost escalation during COVID, made operational decisions that meant that the strategic objectives of the council weren't met. But what I think this resolution that's being put to you before is saying that is basically going to repeat the same mistakes that happened last time. In the risk section of this document, it outlines a number of risks. It outlines the risk of someone being hit during the construction period. It doesn't actually outline the risk of someone being hit after the construction works have been completed. And there was a number of questions raised, including by yourself, Mayor Vernon, I think really focusing on the cost escalation, the staging and the timing, those sorts of issues. So what I'm suggesting is an alternative that I believe can address some of those topics. So it's pretty simple. There's a few things you can do quite more cost effectively. So traffic calming. You put 2 of them at either end of Carlisle Town Centre, you're going to have a lot better safety outcome than the previous upgrade. You already have these on Archer Street, so can you put these throughout the Carlisle Town Centre as part of these works? You'll also notice the protected bike lane. So you've actually dug up that road, installed concrete curbing, had construction on site. That's nice, but that's not necessary. There's actually low-cost alternatives. The same company that sells those speed maps also sells other products. So these can be installed quickly and cheaply and more cheaply. So that would enable a rollout of the protected bike lanes at a lower cost along the entire corridor where the road is very wide. And in actual fact, you already have these on Mint Street right now. I don't know whether you've noticed, but I think this was done for safety reasons. But effectively, this is a de facto protected bike lane on Mint Street right now that functions perfectly well. So I know a number of the councillors went to the open day. I would encourage you to ride a bike and experience these lanes and see if you think that's suitable. This isn't a low-cost budget alternative. Doing this sort of intervention is done all around the world, and it's completely acceptable and appropriate, I think, with a mix of paint, curb and poles. Asphalt art. You will notice the plans have a lot of what I call fancy paving. So that's what you're getting for that 1.2 million. You're laying paving in different patterns. You can achieve the same result with paint. This has a recognised safety benefit. You can do this on either side of the Carlisle Town Centre and throughout the corridor for a much lower cost. Crossing points, sorry to get a little bit nerdy. These sorts of things, like here on Albany Highway, this makes a fundamental difference to the experience. It would be better if this was closer to the giveaway sign, but fundamentally, you don't need to rebuild that entire intersection if you can put something like this on at a lower cost. So this is the design at Mars Street. So if you're a motorist going through, you get full priority. If you're a cyclist going to this location, you come to a full stop. So how I've experienced that when my kids were younger at four-way intersections like this, you have to look over your shoulder, look right, look straight ahead, look left, getting your child to check that the traffic is free. By the time you've checked the fourth side, the frequency of the traffic is so fast that you have to go back and check your first side again. So I'd say it's literally impossible to safely cross this road while teaching your kids about road safety. This is outside the school. This is a complex four-way intersection. I know a lot of work has been done on this. I acknowledge I've got this footage because I'm on the school board. I've been liaising with Dave. I thank him and his team for the work they've done in this location. So you can see on one side there's the Susan, the lollipop lady, but it's actually on both sides where the cars are not giving way because the kids want to cross on multiple locations. So is the design that's being put forward going to achieve this? I'm not sure.
Mr Wilkinson, I will just check in with you because you have hit the 10-minute mark. Do you have a lot more to present, noting obviously that elected members are seeing this essentially for the first time? So
I'd probably be
you've got more to present.
A couple of minutes left.
I'm prepared to extend the time, but obviously if you can finish it as soon as you can, just as a matter of fairness and following our rules.
Yes, and thank you very much. How could you improve this? You could add in further curbing. You see where the green is? There's no protected bike lane there. Just doing that makes a massive difference. You can also put in artwork to emphasise the crossing. This is down on Hubert Street. Just to the scope of your project is ending a block before Albany Highway. People want to ride their bike to Albany Highway. So how are you going to make it easy? I'm a pragmatist. I don't think you have to put in the protected bike lanes. You could put in median crossings. People want to cross all four sides. People also make it easy to get the shared path on the bottom is easy, is great to ride on, but make it easy for them to cross the road there. These are the little, I describe bike infrastructure as my hobby. So sorry for going a little bit deep there. All of this will be for naught if you don't upgrade Shepparton Road. This is a very dangerous intersection for cars, pedestrians and cyclists. This is a state responsibility. There are multiple opportunities to fund this. There is a Commonwealth program that's open right now. It's giving grants of up to $5 million. It closes in January. Your values are up there. I guess I'm asking you to act with integrity, to understand what happened previously in the Carlisle Town Centre, and I'm asking you to be courageous to consider an alternative course of action that may deliver better outcomes for the community. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mr Wilkinson. Are there any questions for our deputation presenter from elected members? No? All right. Well, thank you, Mr Wilkinson, for coming and presenting your deputation in such detail to us. You've given us a great deal to think about.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. All right. So the next item on the agenda is item 10, which is the method of dealing with agenda business. So for elected members, it's proposed and the recommendation is that the following items will be adopted by exception resolution and the remaining items will be dealt with separately. So if there's an item that I list out that you don't wish to have dealt with by exception resolution, please let me know. It is tonight a remarkably brief list. The items for exception resolution are item 11.1, Council Resolution Status Report, October 2024, 14.1, Schedule of Accounts, September 2024, 14.2, Financial Statement, September 2024, and 14.3, Temporary Parking Changes, Metronet and Archer Mint. Those are the 4 items proposed to be dealt with by exception resolution. I'm happy to move that motion. Can I seek a seconder, please? Seconded, Councillor Miles. Is there any dissent? There being no dissent, declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. The next item is item 11, the Chief Executive Officer reports. First item 11.1, Council Resolution Status Report has already been dealt with by exception resolution. That comes to item 11.2, which is elected member superannuation. Now, in relation to this item, following the advice we received from the Department of Local Government, I'm now going to call on elected members to declare their financial interest in this item one by one. I'm just going to go around the council chamber, probably going to go from right to left, and all you need to do is indicate that you have declared a financial interest in this particular item, since we already have your written declarations. Councillor Cruiser.
I have a financial interest in this item.
Thank you. Councillor Hamer.
I have declared a financial interest in this item.
Thank you. Councillor Devereux.
I have also declared a financial interest in this item.
Thank you. Councillor Miles.
I have declared a financial interest in this item.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Ife.
I have a financial interest in this item, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Melrosa.
I have declared a financial interest in this item.
Councillor Anderson.
I have declared a financial interest in this item.
Thank you. And I also have declared that I have a financial interest in this item. For formally on the record, I will read out that in a letter dated the 14th of November 2024, approval was granted under section 5.69 subsection 3 subparagraph A of the Local Government Act 1995 by the Department of Local Government on behalf of the Minister for Local Government for disclosing members Councillor Claire Anderson, Councillor Jessie Hamer, Councillor Lindsay Miles, Councillor Peter Devereux, Councillor Peter Melrosa, Councillor Sky Cruiser, Deputy Mayor Bronwyn Ife and Mayor Karen Vernon to participate and vote on the following item on the town's ordinary council meeting today, 19 November 2024, which is item 11.2, elected member superannuation. In accordance with our meeting procedures local law, I wish to test an alternate motion ahead of the officer recommendation, and I seek to do that now. It has already been disclosed and shared with elected members. And my alternate motion is that Council 1 resolves unanimously to become an eligible governing body under Division 446 of the Taxation Administration Act 1953 of the Commonwealth, effective from 13 December 2024. And 2, notes that the town retains liability for any fringe benefits tax payable because of this decision. In the briefest terms, my reason is for the alternate motion so we can proceed with superannuation for elected members. Understand, Councillor Anderson, you wish to second my alternate motion?
Yes, please, Mayor.
Thank you. So seconded by Councillor Anderson. So I'll speak very briefly to my alternate motion. Council supported a call for superannuation to be paid to all elected members through our submission as a council to the Department of Local Government on the Local Government Act reform in 2021. We did so again in advocacy to the WA Local Government Association and including at the annual WOLGA Annual General Meeting in 2022. Having the superannuation is an important recognition of the amount of time and work involved in the role of being an elected member. But for me, it's also one of fairness and equity. Elected members of Parliament at both state and federal government level who represent the same electors that we represent, and elected local government members in the states of Victoria, New South Wales and Queensland all receive superannuation in addition to their elected member allowances. They do so in the same way that persons who are appointed in Western Australia to sit on statutory positions such as the JDAP, Local Government Advisory Board, Local Government Standards Panel, not to mention a raft of state government board and statutory committee appointments. There is, in my view, no reason why elected members of WA local governments should be treated any differently. And it seemed last year, finally, that the Minister for Local Government agreed with us. It was anticipated that superannuation reform for elected members in Western Australia would be included in Tranche 1 of the local government legislative reforms. However, it wasn't to be. I do acknowledge that it is currently in the provisions of the Local Government Reform Amendment Bill for 2024. However, it is a provision that allows each council in due course to decide if they wish to adopt superannuation for elected members. But for me, superannuation for elected members is also a supportive measure to increase participation and create greater diversity among elected members. It supports diversity of representation on council by improving the allowance for elected members and attracting more people to invest their time and skills into the role, particularly young people, women, culturally and linguistically diverse people who are often disadvantaged through lesser access to superannuation in the traditional workplace anyway. Not having superannuation is a disincentive to attracting the breadth and depth of talented, experienced and diverse people necessary to undertake this important role. We could just wait for the current draft Local Government Amendment Bill 2024 to pass through the upper house and eventually to become law. However, based on the current provisions in that bill regarding superannuation, it will not be compulsory. So our council would still be required in due course to pass a resolution of the same nature as the one we're proposing tonight by my alternate motion to commence superannuation. There is, in my view, no need for us to wait until an unknown date when the bill will be passed through Parliament or to risk any further delays occurring in the passage of that legislation, which frankly is always a risk, when there is in fact another legal pathway to superannuation through taxation legislation that is already available and is set out in detail in the officer's report. If you support the principle of superannuation for elected members, there is, in my view, no reason for you not to support this alternate motion. There is nothing to be gained by us by waiting for the bill to pass, but there is something to be lost by waiting any longer. If we don't need to do so, then we don't have to. The City of Stirling has already done this last year. They are the only council in Western Australia to have done so far, and for 15 months or more now, their elected representatives have received superannuation in addition to their elected member allowance, and it has been a seamless transition for them. So those of you who may be considering, well, it might simply be easier to wait for the government's decision on this, it's important to know the state government has made clear in the explanatory memorandum they will not be passing legislation that makes it a requirement for local governments at this time to pay superannuation. They are providing the means by which each council will have to decide for themselves. That already exists under the Taxation Administration Act. So to the extent that the government process looks like it will be supportive of creating a pathway for superannuation, it is a time-consuming process. And as the officer's report makes mention, the date for this bill to be passed and become law is unknown, and it will not commence until after the regulations have been put in place. Generally speaking, drafting of regulations comes after the Act. So there is a time period left for us to wait. That could be several months, it could be 6 months, it could be a year, it could be longer. There isn't any need to wait. So I encourage you to please support the alternate motion. Councillor Anderson, as the seconder, do you wish to be heard?
Yes, please, Mayor. Thank you. Let's pull up my notes. Superannuation is a standard entitlement for most Australian workers, including elected officials at both state and federal levels. Paying superannuation to local government councillors ensures we are treated equitably and recognises our role as an essential part of the workforce and in government. It will encourage diverse participation. Councillor roles often require significant time and commitment, which can deter people who need to focus on their long-term financial security. Providing superannuation makes the role more attractive, particularly to younger individuals, women and people from diverse backgrounds who may already face financial challenges. I also feel that superannuation reinforces the professionalism of councillor roles, signalling that our contributions are valued. Offering superannuation can attract highly skilled and experienced individuals who might otherwise pursue private sector roles with better financial benefits. You know, I made this decision 17 years ago and I ran and was elected to council. And I made that decision for many reasons. One of them was about being connected to community, to give me a purpose, and I wanted to create change at a local level, which I believed had the biggest impact of all levels of government. It also allowed me the balance of life to actually be the mother I wanted to. I had the time then during the day, take my daughter to school, attend craft, read stories, and I was physically present and I had a role in her life on a day-to-day basis at school as well. So I made that decision to follow the career path of being in local government. But then I had to make sacrifices. I had to make other sacrifices in regards to a career because this one didn't pay superannuation. So for the past 17 years, I have dedicated my time because I believe in acts of service, and that's also something I wanted to teach my daughter about the value of acts of service. But the financial implications cannot be undermined. They are significant. So we often talk about being an innovative council. We talk about courage and we talk about leading change. Well, we have a choice now. We can sit back and we can wait until the state government makes their decision, whenever that will be. We don't know when it's going to come into effect. And let's not forget that there's an election in March, so this could certainly not be a priority. Remembering the election in March, and it could be slow to roll out. Or we could show the leadership. We can support this motion. And I encourage all other elected members to support this, because if one of us doesn't support it, then we all don't have the opportunity to follow this path for superannuation. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Anderson. Is there anyone who wishes to speak against the alternate motion? Is there anyone who wishes to speak for it? Deputy Mayor Ive.
Thank you, Mayor Vernon. Much of what I was hoping to say has already been said, but I think there's a couple of interesting points that I'd like to raise. Just last week, we had a really amazing roundtable event with our Vic Park Young Leaders Group, and a number of elected members were able to be in attendance at that event. And while there was really positive conversation going on around the room, there was also this really interesting support from the young people in the room and interest in potentially running for council. And it was lovely to see and really, really exciting to see. And I was really hopeful that we could continue to motivate these young people to potentially nominate and be elected and come into this room and bring a fresh perspective to the decisions that we're making. But it did allow me to reflect on the last election 2 years ago, or a year ago, sorry, and the election 2 years before that, where I had the opportunity to speak to some younger people who, upon finding out that the income for not the income, the income's what we're looking for, that the circumstances of being an elected member meant that they were not eligible for superannuation, and they found that that was not a commitment they were able to make. It was not a sacrifice that they were able to make, because they would be sacrificing some of their own superannuation from their workplaces in order to have the time to do this job. And there was genuine surprise and disappointment on the faces of people who had until that point been considering running for council. I think it's really important that we remove these sorts of impediments, these sorts of roadblocks that might be preventing people from running. And when we do remove these sorts of impediments and we do allow superannuation to be paid, we will be attracting a much greater variety of people into the room, particularly younger people and particularly women. There is an election in October, and candidates will be making up their minds probably around July or August. I don't feel that we can wait for the government to make this decision. I receive superannuation not only from my work but also from my work on the Local Government Standards Panel and on Burswood Park Board, and I am only on those two bodies because I am an elected member. It is quite baffling that I get superannuation because I'm an elected member on those boards, but not through this work. I don't think I need to say anything further, but I think this is a really important issue and I hope everyone can get behind it. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Deputy Mayor Ife. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak for or against the item? Councillor Cruiser.
Forgive me, I will speak even though I'm repeating points, because I think that our community often want to know why we're choosing to spend money, particularly when we're choosing to spend money in ways that will benefit ourselves. And I agree that there are really important equity reasons for us to approve superannuation. There are many aspects of running for council that mean that the diversity on councils often doesn't fully represent the diversity that exists within our community. Superannuation isn't the only factor, but as others have noted, it certainly is one factor, especially for people who are already structurally disadvantaged when it comes to long-term financial security. And I think that we need to be working to do as much as we can to allow fuller diversity and fuller representation on council and to encourage it. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Cruiser. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on the item? No, not seeing any other indications, so I'll formally ask, is there any dissent? No, there being no dissent, declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Thanks everyone for your contributions to this, and I know that even though not everyone spoke, everyone's had deep considerations about this item since we first started this conversation last year. So I'm very appreciative of everyone's consideration of the many multifaceted issues that go along with elected member superannuation. The next item on the agenda is item 12, which is the Chief Community Planner reports. Item 12.1 is consent to advertise draft Local Planning Policy 39 tree retention, Local Planning Policy 44 significant trees, and Local Planning Policy 45 tree planting for non-residential development. The officer's recommendation is that Council 1 consent to the advertising of draft Local Planning Policy 39 tree retention as contained at Attachment 1, and draft Local Planning Policy 45, tree planting for non-residential development as contained at Attachment 3, for public comment for a minimum period of 28 days, being 7 days greater than the minimum period required by Deemed Clause 4 of the Planning and Development Local Planning Schemes Regulations 2015. 2, note the preparation of draft Local Planning Policy 44 significant trees as contained at Attachment 2. And 3, request the CEO to provide a further report to Council that summarises and responds to any submission received during the public advertising period, along with a recommendation on whether to adopt draft Local Planning Policy 39 tree retention and draft Local Planning Policy 45 tree planting for non-residential development with or without modifications. Can I seek a mover and a seconder, please, for the officer's recommendation? Moved Councillor Cruiser, seconded myself, Mayor Vernon. Now, I understand before I'm going to call upon the mover and the seconder to speak to the item. Councillor Melrosa, did you have some questions, or you had, I think, foreshadowed and flagged a proposed amendment to the item?
Correct. I think most of my questions that I've asked the town over the couple of days have been answered. So I do have that amendment which I've forwarded to governance.
All right, so I just wanted to check, and we've received a copy of that amendment. I'm also going to just quickly foreshadow for everyone a quick amendment that I'm proposing to make to paragraph 3, and I apologise, it's not been shared with you in advance, but all it is to put a time in for the officer report from the CEO to come back. I'll deal with that after we've dealt with the other matters, including Councillor Melrosa's amendment. But I am now going to go Councillor Cruiser as the mover. Do you wish to speak substantively on this item? All right, noting, of course, you have a right to close the debate if you wish to do so. As a seconder, I'm simply going to say very briefly that our council has been committed to developing whatever mechanisms we can through either local laws, policies, local planning policies, attempts at town planning schemes, amendments to deal with the importance of tree retention and tree planting within the town. I'm pleased that we've been able to put together some planning policies that will reflect, I think, the strategic objectives of our urban forest strategy, the wishes of our community for us to take as many steps as we can in whatever ways that we can to protect trees both on private property and public property. And I'm delighted that our community is finally going to get an opportunity to make some real comments about what has been prepared so far and whether they think we've gone far enough or whether they think we need to be more courageous and go further. So I'm looking forward to it. So I hope everyone supports the recommendation. Now, Councillor Melrosa, you wish to move your amendment?
Yes, please. Shall I read it?
If I can get you to read out your amendment wording first, and then we'll hear the reason before I call for a seconder.
The amendment reason... Oh, sorry, you want the reason first?
No, the wording of the amendment first,
Sure.
reason second.
That point 1 of the officer recommendation be amended to read... 1. Consent to advertise of draft local planning policy 39 tree retention as contained at attachment 1 and draft local planning policy 45 tree planting for non-residential development as contained at attachment 3 with the amendments to draft LPP 45 which I outline below for public comment for a minimum period of 28 days being 7 days greater than the minimum period required by deemed clause 4 of the Planning and Development Local Planning Schemes Regulations 2015. Shall I go into the detail of those changes?
Well, I think you're going to need to, because so far, Councillor Melrosa, you've read out paragraph 1 of the officer's recommendation. So if you just want to read out the proposed additional clauses you're looking at having included,
Sure.
which is 5.1, 6.1 and 6.3, please.
Correct. So in 5.1 point I, at a minimum rate of 1 medium tree for every 2 bays. The original text was 4. In 5.1 III, there's an additional word reticulated. Is that okay if I just focus on the
Yes, because we do have it on the screen.
Yeah,
yes,
perfect.
thank you.
In 6.1, again, the additional 6.1a, the additional word is reticulated, and then an additional point E, water-sensitive urban design measures are proposed in the car park design that enables long-term sustainable watering of landscape areas. In 6.3, in point A, the change to the text was the first 5 summers as a side to first 2 summers. And then in point B, an additional part at the end specifying through supplementary watering, periodic mulch application and applying of soil conditioners. Oh, and the reason, sorry. The proposed amendment demonstrates urban forest leadership by the town to address low tree canopy cover on non-residential land and to increase the survivability of trees planted within car park environments in accordance with the town's urban forest strategy.
All right, thanks, Councillor Melrosa. Can I seek a seconder, please, for the proposed amendment? All right, seconded Deputy Mayor Ife. Councillor Melrosa, do you wish to speak substantively to your proposed amendment?
I will speak briefly to start with. I think it's important just to recognise that we're not adopting this policy right now. This is permission to advertise the policy. So the reason for making these changes is I don't think this policy is bold enough. And I think it would be really great for us to go out to our community and show them where we sit on this or stand on this leadership. And I think being able to give the community the option of coming back to us and telling us if we've done it right is far better than us going out and giving them something that is, well, there's really no change. What is before us tonight is actually not a change to the ratio at all. So that ratio doesn't do it. It's almost like we're putting up the policy with really no change to it that's going to have any meaningful impact.
All right, thanks, Councillor Melrosa. Deputy Mayor Ife is the seconder for the proposed amendment. Do you wish to be heard?
Thank you, Mayor Vernon. I won't say terribly much. I think these are ambitious ideas, and I think ambitious ideas can be exciting and worth exploring. I absolutely take Councillor Melrosa's point that this isn't the final approval of these policies, and so when this goes out to the community, it really doesn't resonate with our community members, then we can take that on board. But I think that it's an opportunity for us to be a bit bold and be a bit brave and hopefully do some more things for our tree canopy. So I'm happy to support this amendment. Thanks.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Ife. Since obviously we haven't had a lot of time to look at this amendment, are there any questions about the amendment that anyone would wish to ask? Before I ask if there are others who wish to speak for or against. Councillor Devereux, you indicating you've got a question?
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. Just maybe a question for the town staff in terms of compliance and how they feel about the compliance, monitoring of compliance of these new measures and how arduous that would be.
Direct that question to Ms Martin Good.
Through the chair, there is some commentary in the report about compliance in that we don't do proactive compliance at the town. We very much rely on neighbours submitting complaints or comments to us in terms of enforcement. So there is no proposal to proactively send out our one planning compliance officer to check on those planning approval conditions in the same way that that's the same monitoring regime that we have for all of our planning approvals at the moment. So that is certainly indicated as a challenge in terms of compliance in the future.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Devereux. Were there any other questions that anyone had with relation to the proposed amendment? Councillor Cruiser?
Could I please ask the staff to comment on point 6.1e? Do we already have these requirements for water-sensitive urban design measures in car park designs elsewhere?
Ms Martin Good?
Through the chair, there may be a few elements of water-sensitive urban designs in car parks elsewhere. However, one thing to note that there is a similar requirement in the recently adopted car parking policy 23. So there certainly will be hopefully more of those types of car parks in the future going forward because of those local planning policy 23 provisions.
And does 6.1e then mesh with our requirements in local planning policy 23 and complement them adequately?
Ms Martin Good?
Through the chair, it does in terms of water-sensitive urban design. There are some slight anomalies between those two policies in terms of that Local Planning Policy 23 does require, in clause 5.22, one medium tree for every 4 bays. So you would then have an inconsistency if, in the instance that this policy was adopted after advertising with that provision, we would need to look to make sure that those policies are consistent, because it would be very confusing for applicants to have that inconsistency.
Thanks, Councillor Cruiser. Any other questions? Just a follow-up question from Councillor Cruiser's last one and the associated answer. If subsequent to the public consultation period, if Council then went on to adopt this Policy 45, particularly with these amendments included, would that then mean we would start a process of similar nature to revise LPP 23 accordingly?
Through the Chair, we would need to see how our resources are placed in terms of the review of that policy, particularly considering that's just adopted. So I would like to think that is an easy change if it is just that, but I would need to talk to our staff about resourcing.
All right, thank you. Is there any dissent to the proposed amendment? Anyone who wishes to speak against? Councillor Hamer.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. There's a few points to talk about there, but after reading the replies from the officers' questions that were raised by Councillor Melrosa, there's clear reasons for most of those points to not be supported, and I won't be supporting this amendment. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Hamer. Is there someone who now wishes to speak in favour of the proposed amendment? Yes, you can ask a question, Councillor Miles.
So if we're reducing with this the amount of reducing, increasing, whichever way around it is, from 1 tree per 4 car bays to 1 tree per 2 car bays. So what does the town think the impacts of that would be? Obviously, apart from having more trees, but in terms of like negative impacts for the town.
Ms. Martin-Good.
Through the Chair, one of the impacts that we thought might have been a disincentive of increasing the tree ratio is, if I take you back to when you adopted in September, Local Planning Policy 23, where we adopted an open car parking policy, i.e. applicants get to choose how many car bays that they propose. So if they get to choose and there's a policy requirement of every 2 car bays having a tree, they'll need to have regard to the cost of purchasing the tree, of planting the tree, of maintaining the tree. That might be, and I emphasise the word might be a disincentive for them to choose to provide more car parking bays than not. But that is certainly, that's an estimate and only hypothecated at this stage. We haven't engaged with any developers to get any concrete evidence in that regard.
Councillor Miles, other questions?
And how would this impact with regards to Acrod bays? Do they count separately, or are they part of the 2? Or
Ms. Martin-Good.
Through the Chair, the provision of Acrod bays is a requirement under the Building Code of Australia, so that would not change. There is still a separate requirement, so you're always required to provide Acrod bays for commercial developments.
I think, though, Councillor Miles's question was somewhat different. She was wanting to know, would the Acrod bays count for the allocation of the trees every 2 bays? So if you had 2 Acrod bays, or say 6 Acrod bays, would that mean that there was 1 tree proposed every pair of Acrod bays? Would they also be included in this, given that they're wider than the normal parking bay? Ms. Martin-Good.
Through the Chair, from memory, I think that's included in the total number of bays. So let's say an applicant proposes 2 bays, they would have to provide one of them if it's a commercial development as an Acrod bay.
I don't know that I clarified it well enough, Councillor Miles. Do you want to add anything further to make it clear so that Ms. Martin-Good can address that? Because I think it was about if we move to a policy position of requiring one tree for every 2 bays instead of 1 tree for every 4 bays, will the same apply to a row of Acrod bays? Ms. Martin-Good. Oh, Mr. Doy is keen to answer this one, so we'll have to let him say something at tonight's meeting. Mr. Doy.
Through you, Mayor Vernon, in the context of that provision, an Acrod bay counts as 1 bay.
We got there. Anything further, Councillor Miles? No. Any other questions from any elected members? Deputy Mayor Ive.
I have a question that sprung from that question. When I was picturing this in my head of one for every 4 bays or even one for every 2 bays, I wasn't necessarily picturing it as being 2 car bays, 1 tree, 2 car bays, 1 tree. I was picturing more that the car park space, if it has 10 car bays, has to have 5 trees. Am I correct in that interpretation?
I'm actually going to go to Councillor Melrosa first, since he moved the amendment, and get his view, and then we'll see if the town staff agree. How's that? Councillor Melrosa, going to enjoy that.
I love that view. I think I wondered this as well, actually. I thought, well, in my brain, it was tree, car park, tree. Car park, tree, yeah. It was just in a line. It was perpendicular. It wasn't any other configuration.
That's how my brain saw it. But Ms Martin Good, the town's interpretation?
Through the chair, the most common interpretation I've seen in the majority of local governments I've worked in is, as Councillor Melrosa has said it. However, there is nothing stopping an interpretation another way, because the wording of that clause doesn't clarify either way, notwithstanding that there is a common interpretation.
Deputy Mayor Ive, anything further?
I'm going to go back to designing car parks. Thank you.
All right, we'll let you go back to designing car parks in your mind. Any other questions that arise out of that? All right, looks like there might be no further questions. Look, I'm going to speak in favour of the proposed amendment, given we've had a speaker against. I'm prepared to support the amendment because I do think we do rely on our credentials as an urban forest leader, and although this is planning, it's quite clear that planning and urban tree canopy are intricately linked. I also think a few things should be borne in mind. This is tree planting for non-residential developments. We are not likely in a town, as we are constrained as we are, likely to see a proliferation of car parks associated with non-residential developments, but the ones that do spring up, I do feel like they're likely to be for the people who work there, but they'll also have an impact on the surrounding streetscape. And in my mind, 1 tree, 2 bays, 1 tree looks infinitely better than, dare I say it, a car park that was spoken of earlier tonight in the middle of our town at the Hawaiian Park Centre, where there isn't a tree every 2 car bays, and it still looks quite stark and barren at the rate at which they've been spaced out. So I'm heartened to hear that there appears to be a interpretation variation that would be open to allow someone creatively to design their car parking bay with the equivalent of 1 tree to every 2 bays, wherever it might be, or those who just see things in the linear world like I do and like to set them out in that way. That too will be great. So I'd be interested in hearing what our community thinks. I'm pretty sure if they don't like the idea, they will let us know. So I'm prepared to support it. Is there someone who wishes to speak against? Is there anyone else who wishes to speak for or against before I call upon Councillor Melrosa to close the debate on his amendment? No, Councillor Melrosa, you to close the debate on your amendment.
Thanks. Look, to start with, I think compliance is a challenge regardless of what that ratio actually is. And I hope we can work towards dealing with our compliance matters around trees, and it's not just us, it's all local government there. And it's great to hear that some of those anomalies that we might have with those 2 LPPs are potentially easy to change. But I do want to address some of the commentary that the town provided me in my pursuit of this amendment. And one of the comments was that the administration was of the view that 1 medium tree per 4 car bays as proposed was sound and adequately ambitious by industry standards, but I would definitely argue that is not the standard we should be aspiring to. The examples that the town provided were City of Stirling 1 in 6, Canning 1 in 4, Melville 1 in 6, and South Perth 1 in 4, which is a really interesting because no one's particularly ambitious and everyone's doing something different, so there isn't really much of a standard. But if we cast our mind back to maybe the late 70s when Mirrabooka Square was developed, which happens to be in the City of Stirling, the tree planting in that car park was 1 in 6, and I'm using shopping centres for an example here because there's just really bad examples. 90% of the trees in that car park haven't grown, or they didn't survive. Carousel, which has kind of been many stages of development since the 60s, is 1 in 4 pretty much. Had fairly successful tree survivability, ability, but still so much limited shade in that car park when you view it from above. South Perth, a recent example of Farmer Jack's on Canning Highway, they actually have a 1 in 3 ratio, even though they don't have to have a 1 in 3 ratio, except they chose pretty bad trees, I think. In Vic Park 2018, we had Aldi, and that's actually 1 in 4. And in 6 years' growth, those trees have done absolutely nothing. There's no opportunity for canopy in that car park at this time. And 2024, we've got the childcare on Shepparton Road. That's actually 1 in 2. So we're already seeing proponents providing more ratio. So, and one more actually, that's currently before the town is 318 Shepparton Road, where there's a variety of 1 in 2 and 1 in 3 being proposed. So what that really says to me is that the market is willing to provide, so we should lift our standard. There's also really terrible examples of car parking out there. In the early 90s, Lakeside Joondalup had a 1 in 4 and 90% of the trees haven't grown or survived. Early 2010s, the Curtin Hockey Parking, there's 0 trees in 820 bays. And then Crown, this is a little bit of a story behind it, but there's 60,000 metres squared or 2,500 bays and not a single tree. That's really, really dismal. So anyway, it brings me to this point. What does this proposed amendment do? Positions our town as the local government leader in seeking tree canopy on non-residential land going forward. And when we are already looked upon for being innovative, this is a great thing. It provides our community the opportunity to give us comment on an improved policy that seeks better outcomes for tree canopy than what is originally proposed by the town. It does not preclude an applicant from seeking a variation to the policy, and that's a key point. If this is prohibitive, they will let us know. It provides improved chance for trees to survive in the car park environment, which we can all agree are pretty hostile places, and in a changing climate. And by way of things like the longer reticulation duration to establish trees and high levels of aftercare, which the need for is so widely demonstrated in pretty much any example of trees in non-residential car parking. It's unlikely, as the Mayor has suggested or posited, it's probably not going to impact small business because they already don't have to provide the car parking now, and they're on small lots, so the number of parking that they will be able to provide is already low. So there's nothing to be lost in letting our community have the opportunity to comment on our ambitions in the urban forestry space. And if we're already seeing those applicants choosing better tree ratios, doesn't that demonstrate our standard is too low to begin with? So for the above reasons, I urge you all to support this amendment.
All right. Thanks, Councillor Melrosa. If everyone could now cast their vote, please, only on the amendment. Looks like my system is not registering electronic voting for me, so for the record, I vote in favour of the amendment, and I think we're ready to declare the outcome. Declare the proposed amendment is carried. Those in favour, myself, Mayor Vernon, Councillor Anderson, Deputy Mayor Ive, Councillor Melrosa, Councillor Miles, Councillor Cruiser, Councillor Devereux, and those against, Councillor Hamer. Thank you. You now go back to the substantive recommendation as amended. I'm now going to propose a minor amendment to paragraph 3 of the officer recommendation, which is to add in the words by March 2025 after the word council in the first line. And my reason for proposing that amendment is to give some certainty to when the Chief Executive Officer needs to bring back the further report to Council, and Ms Martin Good has already informed me that March 2025 is an appropriate time for the administration to bring that report back to Council. Can I have a seconder, please, for my proposed amendment? So that's been that amendment's been seconded by Councillor Hamer. I don't wish to be heard. Councillor Hamer, do you wish to be heard on the proposed amendment? No. I'm going to formally ask, is there any dissent? No, there being no dissent, declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. We go back now to the substantive recommendation as amended. Is there any dissent? Councillor Hamer?
Yes, I don't believe in advertising these policies with those changes, especially if we're going to be asking for people's feedback, and then we're not going to be re-advertising the policy with the changes we make, which are probably more in line with what the officers recommend. So I believe it's probably the wrong practice to be being too optimistic in what we could achieve, because it's just unrealistic to make those tree to parking bay ratios. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favour of the amended recommendation? If not, I'll go to Councillor Cruiser as the mover to close the debate. No one else wishes to be heard. Councillor Cruiser, do you wish to close the debate?
Just very briefly, I'm aware that many people in our community feel very strongly that the urban forest strategy is valuable, that tree canopy is incredibly important, particularly as climate change means that our summers are going to get hotter. And I think that that giving them the chance to give feedback on an ambitious policy is a great idea, and I look forward to hearing more about what the community thinks about it.
Thanks, Councillor Cruiser. If everyone could now please cast their vote in relation to the officer recommendation as amended. Again, as it appears my electronic voting is not working, I cast my vote in favour of the recommendation as amended. Declare that is carried. Those in favour, myself, Mayor Vernon, Councillor Anderson, Deputy Mayor Ife, Councillor Melrosa, Councillor Miles, Councillor Cruiser and Councillor Devereux. Those against, Councillor Hamer. Thank you. Thanks everyone for your great discussion and debate on that topic. We move now to item 13, the Chief Operations Officer reports. Item 13.1 is TVP 2419 Burswood Station East Stage 1A Styles Griffith Park Upgrade Tender Report. This is an absolute majority item, elected members. The recommendation is that Council awards the contract associated with TVP 2419 Burswood Station East Stage 1A to Phase 3 Landscaping Construction for the upgrade of the Styles Griffith Reserve at Burswood, with the terms and conditions as outlined in the contract for the lump sum price of $747,939.11 exclusive of GST, and 2, approves a budget amendment to increase the capital works budget for Burswood Station East Styles Griffiths Reserve Upgrade Stage 1A by an additional $210,000, and to increase the transfers from reserve from the Future Fund Reserve by $210,000. Seeking a mover and seconder, please, for the officer recommendation. I'm assuming everyone's either moved or seconded by now, but we're still seeking a mover and a seconder. Moved Councillor Cruiser, seconded myself, Mayor Vernon. Councillor Cruiser, do you wish to be heard on this item? Thank you. I don't wish to be heard at this stage. Are there any questions in relation to this item from elected members? Councillor Cruiser?
Previously, we've asked questions about anti-skate elements included in the park. Is it necessary to include an amendment if we would like those removed?
All right, going to direct those questions to our Strategic Project Manager, Mr Check. So in order to remove the skate deterrent interventions or mechanisms in the design, which I think the answer to Councillor Cruz's questions earlier today indicated could be done, will that require a specific amendment to be needed to be made to the resolution tonight, please? Oh, Ms Adams, you're going to take that question. Thank you.
Thank you. So through the chair, because this report is actually just asking for approval of the tender as is, the amendment will need to require the CEO to negotiate with the preferred tenderer to remove that as a variation to the contract or prior to actually approving the contract.
All right, thank you. Are we able to get some assistance from either Ms Adams or Ms Bowman as to some appropriate wording for that amendment for Councillor Cruiser? Ms Bowman makes an excellent point. As per our usual practice, when we reach 2 hours of sitting, we have a short adjournment. We're just 9 minutes short of that now, or 10 minutes short. So I think what I'm going to propose is that we take our adjournment now for a brief comfort break and allow the administration to put together some wording for the amendment that Councillor Cruiser is proposing be made to this item. So I'm going to propose that we now adjourn for 10 minutes at 8:20 p.m. Seconded Deputy Mayor Ife. Thank you. Is there any dissent? No, there being no dissent, declare that carried. Thank you. We're now adjourned for 10 minutes. Thank you, everyone. All right, thank you everyone. Welcome back, and to those who were joining us tonight on live streaming, we apologise for the extended delay period. It's now 8:39 p.m. and we are resumed. I think we have been able to resolve one issue with this item, and sounds like the sound gods don't like us, so we're getting a message being sent to us, I think. So apologies for the mechanical sound that those watching on live streaming may have just heard in the background. So coming now back to this item, Councillor Cruiser, did you wish to proceed with a proposal for an amendment to the recommendation by the officers for the tender award?
After discussion about the consequences, I do not.
All right, thank you. So I am now going to ask formally, so we can determine if we need debate, is there any dissent to the officer's recommendation? No, there being no dissent, declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. All right, so the next item on the agenda is item 13.2, which is TVP 2416, Archer Mint Streetscape and Black Spot Funded Intersections Tender Report. Elected members, this is an absolute majority item. The recommendation is that Council 1 awards the contract associated with the Archer Mint Streetscape and Black Spot Funded Intersections to BOS Civil for streetscape upgrade along Archer Street between Planet to Mars Street and raised intersections on Mint Beatty and Mint Hubert Street, with the terms and conditions as outlined in the contract for the lump sum price of $1,859,453.37, exclusive of GST. 2, approves the budget amendment to increase the capital works budget for A, Archer Street Streetscape Improvement Plan Stage 1B by $100,000, B, intersection improvement Mint Street and Beatty Avenue by $172,000, and C, intersection improvement Mint Street and Hubert Street by $217,000. 3, approves the budget amendment to increase the capital grants income for A, intersection improvement Mint Street and Beatty Avenue by $60,000, and B, intersection improvement Mint Street and Hubert Street by $60,000. And 4, approves the budget amendment to increase the transfers from reserve from the future projects reserve by $369,000. Seeking a mover and seconder, please. So moved Councillor Cruiser, still seeking a seconder. Seconded Councillor Hamer. Councillor Cruiser, as the mover, did you wish to be heard at this time? Could just get you to pop your microphone on, please. Yep.
In the previous presentation, Mr. Wilkinson mentioned a Commonwealth infrastructure program that funds infrastructure for active cycle areas. Have we applied for that, or are we applying for that?
Going to direct that question to the Acting CEO, Mr. Doy.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon, and thanks for the question. We've applied for the West Australian Bike Network grant, which is state funding. There is new funding, I think it's called the Active Transport Fund from, careful on my naming on that, from federal government, which we're investigating at the moment, but we have not applied for.
Could you tell us a little bit more about the state funding that you have applied for covering this area?
Going to direct that one to Mr. Check.
Through the chair, thank you for the question. Yes, so the Western Australian Bicycle Network grant application was made for the protected bike lane stage 3 between Raleigh and Hubert Street. This application was submitted the think in September. I will just have to confirm. We are currently waiting for the outcome from the Department of Transport, which should come by end of November.
Councillor Cruiser, were you seeking more details about that grant funding than just when we'd applied for it?
I would like to know also if it will be for a protected bike lane.
Mr. Check.
Yes, so through the chair, that's correct. This is for the next stage of the protected bike lane for the Mint Street section. The key criteria for the WABN, the Western Australian Bike Network grant application, is focused on connectivity to the train station and safety. So this project fits the selection criteria of the grant application.
Thank you. Councillor Cruiser, any further questions about that? Sure. More than happy. Mr. Check, are you able to advise us with regards to that application for grant funding? How much has the town applied for this project?
I will have to confirm on this item, so I'll take that on notice.
All right, thank you. I think you indicated in your answer earlier that we would expect to hear back on our application for the protected bicycle lanes running from Raleigh to Hubert Street before the end of this year. What will happen if we're unsuccessful in obtaining that grant funding at that time for the future of that particular project, and how does that interrelate to the tender project that's before us tonight?
Through the chair. So in terms of outcome or the implication of not being successful, we will have on-road cycle lane. So we will not have funding from the Department of Transport, and we will have to investigate other funding opportunities as mentioned previously. For this section. However, it's important to probably highlight the fact that, given the fact that Department of Transport contributed for the first stage of the protected bike lane at 50% for the protected bike lane, and the proximity with the Carlisle train station, which is due to open in 2025. There is also, I would say, a strong push for Department of Transport to be involved in that project to continue on protected bike lane. Obviously, we'll have to wait for the outcome of that grant application. But yeah, the project itself on Main Street meet a number of criteria. One being the connectivity with the Carlisle train station. Sorry.
No, that's more than fine. Did you have anything further that you needed to add?
Yeah, just wanted to add, in the case of, we will not have a protected bike lane in relation to the current tender for portion B and portion C. The cycling activity will be on road, and the cyclist will continue their journey on the to the intersection via the treatment, via the raised treatment, which include a green paint and a raised plateau, which will improve the current condition for cyclists.
Thanks, Mr. Check. The proposition that was put to us this evening by our community member, Mr. Wilkinson, during the deputation showed, I'll call it for want of a better technical expression, apologies, Mr. Wilkinson, an alternate form of protected bicycle lanes, which was shown with, I think, a small low-level curbing into the bitumen and then some poles at regular intervals that creates a form of protected bicycle lane. Is that style of protected bicycle lane something that meets the eligibility criteria for the WA Bicycle Network Grants program and or the strategic outcomes that Department of Transport is trying to progress through that WA Bicycle Network Grant program? Mr. Check.
Through the chair, thanks. Thank you for this question. We could potentially investigate an alternative option with a curbside treatment, what we call the bicycle divider, which is a curb anchored into the asphalt with a flexible bollard, which could be an option. However, it's important to notice that this is not necessarily aligned with the intent of the RCMIN protected bike lane endorsed by Council, which shows a different treatment. That's one point. And second point, it will also have to be discussed with the Department of Transport in regards to the Waban grant. They might necessarily agree on that type of treatment given the previous treatment on stage 2 with the protected bike lane. So it's also about maintaining consistency in the treatment and connectivity to the transition and obviously safety for cyclists. I think in terms of safety, you could achieve the same outcome, but in terms of landscaping and other elements which are critical for the endorsed concept for the bike lane in terms of greening the corridor, we might not necessarily meet those objectives.
All right, thank you. Taking the point that Councillor Cruiser may still have some questions to ask, given that I did submit a significant number of questions related to this item previously and have received some answers from the town staff later this afternoon, I would like to ask some of those questions on the record so that there's some open transparency of exchange of information. These questions came from propositions put to elected members by Mr Wilkinson regarding a deputation he wished to make tonight. So my first question is, does attachment 13.2.5 for the officer's report show that the final design for portion A of the tender has been amended since the concept design stage with the traffic calming removed? Ms Adams?
Thank you, Mayor. I will just refer elected members, please, to the attachments that we did leave on the desks. So there are attachments which have the drawings which show the concept plans, which are the coloured plans, and then we've got the engineering drawing which shows the design that was tendered. So in conjunction with that, there is a small table that shows 2 columns which reference the changes and the design intent on those plans. So the left-hand column has the key objectives of the RCMIN Streetscape approved concept plan, and the right-hand column have the design responses that were in the tender drawings. Looking at that, it becomes quite clear that you can see that the concept design for portion A, or what we've called portion A, does call for traffic calming measures, and that includes raised intersections. So the final design for that portion A does align with the design principles of the endorsed Archer Streetscape concept plan by the use of the raised plateau and ramps at the approach to Mars and Archer Street intersection.
All right, thank you, Ms Adams. My next question is, does the town then agree that, I guess in light of your answer, try to change that somewhat, does the town agree with, I think, an underlying proposition made in the deputation this evening that we are in danger or at risk of repeating issues that occurred with the initial 2023 upgrade of the Carlisle Town Centre? Ms Adams?
Thank you, Mayor. With consideration of Mr Check's previous comment that there's a consistency and a consistent approach that's been applied throughout. So therefore, there's no real amendment to the current streetscape design. We've kept that, but we don't believe that it is going to repeat issues without any further specifics on the types of issues that might be of concern. So that's been, we've tried to consider lessons learnt and apply a consistent approach.
All right, thank you. So this is a forward-looking question spurred on by the issues raised by Mr Wilkinson in his deputation. Can a further review of the design be undertaken before awarding this tender? And the follow-up question to that would be, what are the ramifications if there was to be a further review of the design before awarding the tender? Ms Adams?
Thank you, Mayor. So I'll probably reiterate this is a request to approve a tender as tendered on the design drawings that we have provided. So we, again, say that it is in line with the approved concept plan, in particular with the 4 key objectives. So we do not consider that a further review is required or necessary. Again, if Council choose not to award this tender, then we would have to go redesign if necessary and actually go out to tender again on the new design.
But just to make it clear, that would potentially only be in relation to portion A if Council was minded to consider that there were points that should be addressed in a further review. Because my understanding of the presentation from the deputation is support exists for portions, call it B and C, of what's proposed in the tender, or is it the town's view that the entire proposed tender as it currently is recommended would be impacted by doing a further review of the design of portion A? Ms Adams?
Thank you, Mayor. My understanding is that they are all separable portions, so we could award portions 2 and 3 for the other portions and not proceed with the construction of portion A.
All right, thank you. My next question then is, what are the consequences if Council were to determine tonight that they do not proceed with the portion A, the Mars to Planet Street upgrade at this time? Ms Adams?
Thank you, Mayor. So if Council doesn't proceed with the upgrade at the Mars Planet intersection at this time, there are potential delays to the project timeline because we may be required to restart the tender process. There is potential increased costs with the new submissions from the tenderers. There's a potential, we consider this is a critical time with the Carlisle precinct, in particular with the metro networks, and there could be stagnation potentially in the streetscape works as well. And then I suppose in the absence of adequate, traffic calming measures, there could potentially be some safety risks for cyclists and pedestrians, not in line with our safe active transport initiatives.
Thank you. Now, we also heard from Mr Wilkinson, and I'm hoping to not do a great disservice to his very detailed deputation, but he gave us a list of some things that he considered were low-cost interventions that could actually be implemented along this section of Archer Street and indeed all the way up towards Albany Highway. Some of those, if I remember them rightly, are the alternative bicycle lane, the bicycle divider with flexible bollards, so I want to get that right, asphalt art. I think I've potentially missed one of the ones writing down that he referred to, but noting that officers have been present during the deputation, what can you say in response to the suggestion that we could upgrade the entire Mint Archer corridor with proven low-cost interventions in the same time that the railway line upgrade for Metronet is expected to be completed in 2025? Ms Adams or Mr Check?
Through the chair. Thank you for the question. It is possible to upgrade the main Archer corridor with proven low-cost treatment. However, I just want to reiterate the fact that it's only one element as part of the Archer Mint streetscape plan endorsed by council, and I'll just reiterate that there are various objectives. Traffic calming is one of them, but you also have the enhancement of the urban tree canopy, which I think we discussed previously in terms of greening the corridor, improve the pedestrian and cycling accessibility and safety, and the encouragement and to encourage the use of the Carlisle train station. So the design response that we provided through this project really aligns with those objectives. If you were to implement some of those items, such as potentially speed cushions, which were discussed, or bicycle dividers, you could achieve some of those objectives, but not necessarily all of them. And then leave a gap for other elements. For instance, if you're looking at improving the pedestrian and cycling accessibility, we need also to consider the reconfiguration of intersections, for instance, as we're doing as part of this project to improve pedestrian accessibility with tactile indicators, improve wayfinding, which is part of this project. And for instance, in terms of urban tree canopy, we also are considering the addition of new trees on portion A. Some low-cost measures are possible, but they will not necessarily meet the objective of the concept design and the aspiration of the community.
Thanks, Mr. Check. All right, I have another question. I was intrigued by the deputation presentation about the use of asphalt art, and I understand that consideration was given to the utilisation of that in our Etwell Street revitalisation several years ago. But I might turn to our acting CEO, Mr. Doy, since his place planning team had quite a bit to do with the activation of Etwell Street. Is there a appetite from the town and or main roads towards the utilisation of asphalt art for any of the purposes that have been outlined so far tonight in the deputation? Mr. Doy?
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. Yeah, there's an appetite. There's an appetite from the town. We've explored it at Etwell Street. We've explored it at Gallipoli Street. We explored it as part of the design that's before you right now with Mint and Beatty. But that's from the town. The appetite is not there from main roads, and so we've really struggled. So main roads provide some guidance, and we've done this. I've done this before in my career in the past, but at the moment, main roads have been really difficult and have probably changed their position a little bit in terms of decorative artworks on the pavement. So we originally had a decorative artwork on the Mint and Beatty intersection, which didn't go any further because of main roads.
All right, thank you. I think I've asked a lot of questions. Other elected members might be sitting there and have burning questions, and Councillor Cruiser, you might have had some time to gather some thoughts. You've got some further questions you'd like to ask, or anyone else. Happy to hear other questions. This is the time to do it.
If we want to, given that the position of the town is that the Mars Street and Archer Street intersection is in line with the previous council decision, if we wanted to redesign it, would we need to revoke a previous council decision?
Ms Adams?
So through the chair, that would depend upon whether the key objectives that were approved in the concept plan report were wanting to be changed. So, and just distinguishing, so council provide that strategic advice to the administration and set those key objectives, and then operationally the town administration provides a design response for consideration and brings that tender to council for approval.
Councillor Cruiser?
The design that we have here for the Mars Street and Archer Street intersection does not make it clear exactly what measures are going to be put in place for traffic calming. Is it possible to talk us through that in more detail? For example, when we have a raised intersection, how much of a raised intersection will that be? And what other measures are in place? Because I'm not always good at reading engineering drawings.
All right, so we can certainly ask the administration to outline those features. Mr Check, would you like to commence us with that, please?
Through the chair, thank you for the question. So in terms of treatment, the Mars and Archer intersection has a raised intersection of 75 millimeters, which align with the standards in terms of the design. It has three ramps, which are delimited on the signs and line marking plan, sheet number 3. And you can see some line marking at the ramp, which encourage a slower movement for vehicles. This was a particular item for the admin team to ensure that we have a slower speed at the entrance of the town centre. So yeah, we have those treatments in place with the ramps on Archer and also on Mars Street. And those treatments, aligns with the concept design endorsed by concept.
All right, thank you. Now, I think, Councillor Cruiser, am I right in thinking you only referred to the raised intersection as one of the aspects that you were looking to get some more detail on? Do you want to outline all the ones that you see, or and we'll see if we get to the end of that and if there is any further ones that the town can point to? Councillor Cruiser?
Following up further on that Mars Street and Archer Street intersection, I see on sheet 3 that there is a reference to speed humps installed for 30 kilometres an hour. Is the opinion that this design is designed to enforce 30 kilometre per hour speeds through proven and effective design measures?
Mr Check?
Yes, we have. There is a plan to reduce the speed in the town centre, which is a section between Mars and Raleigh. And a vehicle at the approach will have to slow down and enter into the speed. We are currently designing based on this parameter.
Thanks, Mr Check. Councillor Cruiser?
And that will be enforced in part through these speed humps that are designed to require 30 km an hour speeds. Could you briefly tell us what shape those speed humps are? It's just ramps?
Mr Check?
Yeah, so on the signs and line marking plan, you can see actually ramps. So they are what we call concrete ramps that link to the raised plateau. And they are, I think, if I'm correct, 2 meter. I have a length of 2 meter and height of 75 millimeters to slow down traffic. So they're not like they're not speed cushion or rubber speed cushion as you can we have on other section of Archer Street.
All right, thanks, Mr. Check. Anything further, Councillor Cruiser?
To clarify, do those design elements and those ramps themselves slow speeds to 30 k's an hour, or is that the expectation that the complete design would do that?
Mr. Check.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I might just take that question.
All right, Ms. Adams, more than happy.
So, in spite of whatever treatments you have, people are free to do whatever speed they want. So it is a physical demarcation of a change in speed. You're entering a new environment on a raised plateau, and it is generally understood by drivers that that means a slower speed. And coupled with the signage that says it's 30 kilometres an hour, that is the intention. But if the question is about whether that will physically reduce the speed, the answer is no.
Anything further, Councillor Cruiser? No, not at this time. Councillor Devereux, I think you had some questions. And look, there might be quite a lot of questions here, but everyone needs to keep in mind that what we're being asked to decide upon is the award of the tender. And we do run the risk that we end up asking a lot of questions about the detailed design, which isn't entirely our function to deal with. So happy to receive more questions, but if everyone could keep that in mind about what they're trying to focus on. Councillor Devereux, you had some questions?
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. So can I just check the sheet 3 that we've been referred to, is that part of the OCM documents that are online?
Ms. Adams?
Through the Chair, no, it's not. It has been provided, it's a signs and line marking plan that's been provided in addition just for consideration and understanding of the comparison with the concept design.
Thank you. And can you give us an idea of whether the Bishopsgate design would have been similar to this when it was originally proposed compared to what happened?
You're welcome to take your time.
Sorry.
Obviously, elected members were asking a lot of detailed questions of the town staff at the moment, and they may not have had advance notice of some of these questions, so we may need to allow some time for them to look into that, especially if we are now comparing, Councillor Devereux, as your question does, what is here with former plans for former projects, so we may need to allow some time for that. Happy, Mr. Check or Ms. Adams, for you to let me know when you're ready to answer that question. Mr. Check?
In regards to the Bishopsgate and Archer roundabout, the initial concept design had ramps on both sides of Bishopsgate, which is actually, we have raised what we call raised pedestrian crossings. And as pointed out in the deputation, the design that was the construction, of the roundabout on Bishopsgate and Archer as part of a previous stage of the streetscape did not include those elements. So it was something we considered as part of the detailed design, but due to technical reasons and levels and accessibility through the detailed design process, achieving those elements would have been challenging.
All right, Councillor Devro.
Thank you. So I think, I guess I'm getting at, it seems like we've made an improvement on the basis of the experience we had with the design for Mars Street from that experience. Is that a correct assessment?
Mr. Check.
Through the chair. Yes, as part of the the lessons learned process, looking at previous feedback from designer and community, we look at the design of this current section, portion A, and had a particular focus on slowing the speed with careful consideration for doors ramps and make sure that they are included as per the endorsed concept design.
Any further questions, Councillor Devro?
Thank you. I asked that because that was raised in the deputation. The last thing that was also raised in the deputation was the culture survey that was noted as, for some reason, in the confidential section of the documents. I noticed that there are some emails and phone numbers in that report, but I would assume they could be reasonably easily removed, given would it be possible to remove those identifying elements from that simple summary that would enhance community understanding of the value of what's being done?
Before I ask Mr. Check to answer that question, Ms. Adams and our Acting Manager of Governance and Strategy are just conferring about that, because I do take your point, Councillor Devereux, if there is a means to de-anonymise or redact the names and confidential details but leave the overarching information, we may be able to do that, but I fear we probably won't be able to do that tonight. Ms. Adams, conclusion on that?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So through the chair, we believe that, yes, we can provide a redacted document, but it will need to be reviewed prior to publication.
All right. Councillor Devereux?
That's great. Maybe just one last question in relation to that. Would it be possible to make that in a slightly more user-friendly version as you try and do that? Because it's like a font of 6 or something at the moment. It's very difficult to understand that. So, but I think it would be helpful in terms of community interest. Thanks.
All right. I think we'll take that more as something we can take on board, Councillor Devereux. Are there other questions about this? Councillor Melrosa, I think you were indicating you had some questions earlier.
I do, just one, and it's about the detailed design and how it relates to the other part of the project. But Mr. Check said earlier that the raised platform to Mars Street is a 75 mil high raised platform extended over a 2 metre long raised extension, I guess, and 50 metres away is the installed speed bumps from the previous project that are, I believe, also 75 mil high, but they don't have a 2 metre long extension. They're probably like 30 centimetres at most, and the difference between driving up a 75 mil 2 metre long extended ramp at 30, which is probably doable, is vastly different to driving over the installed speed bumps, which you cannot do at 30. And I'm just wondering why the vehicles get slowed down more at a spot that doesn't require them to be slowed down, yet as they enter the town square for this plan, they aren't being slowed down as much. I think there is a level of inconsistency in the approaches of how we're managing the speed on this road, and I'm wondering which bit falls by the wayside. Do we go back and deal with the speed bumps that are currently installed, or do we see more of those at some point in this plan going forward, whether it's this particular stage or the ones coming up?
So there was obviously a lot in there, but I think the question was pretty straightforward. Mr. Check, are you, or Ms. Adams, are you happy to address that? Thank you.
So through the chair, I'm just, if I've captured that correctly, you're just wondering why we've used speed bumps on, say, your through sections, but at the intersections we've got a raised plateau. If that's correct, the answer is that we are trying to control the speed along the way, and yes, you do have to dramatically slow your car down when you've got the speed bumps. Intersections are meant to also allow some permeability for the pedestrians to go across, and that's why it's a raised plateau environment by intent, which is why you then have a more graduated increase over the distance of that 75 mils over a 2 metre grade. So you are entering, by definition, a lower speed environment. You are demarcating that as a separate one, but we want the ability for pedestrians in particular to be able to just cross freely.
Councillor Melrosa, do you think that captures the answer to the question you're intending would be answered, or do you want to seek some further clarification?
I might ask this or delve into this further outside of the meeting, but I don't think it did answer it, because if the desire is to slow the speed on Archer Street and there are a variety of measures that are being chosen to do so, wouldn't it make more sense for all of the road users on the road to experience the level of consistency around that? So, you know, for instance, Western Street.
So, sorry, Councillor Melrosa, I need to make sure that you're not making like statements or addressing argument that you might want to make on the item. You sort of sounded like it was getting to a question. Can you formulate it as a question so that in fairness the town can answer your proposition? So just take your proposition and turn it into a question. Which means I'm asking you to focus on your proposition out of the statement that you just made.
I guess I'm just trying to understand why one measure is being used and the other. And I take the point that there is a town centre coming up, but it just doesn't seem to make sense. That's all I can say.
Okay, well, doesn't seem to make sense is a statement, but we do need to try to get a question. Ms Adams, I guess I'm probably not the best person to try and intervene in breaking this down, but is it the case that the town is prioritising one form of intervention over the other in this design? Are we trying to put two interventions in close proximity to each other when there is no need for that? So I know they're two separate questions, but one, prioritising one intervention over the other, and two, including two interventions in close proximity that are not necessarily needed. Ms Adams?
Sure. Through the chair, if I can answer on this question.
Absolutely, Mr Chair.
So I guess there are two types of transport or movement consideration. One is the town centre, which is more a place-focused environment where you want to slow the speed and encourage pedestrian activation with the use of ramps. And that's what we're trying to achieve on the concept. And then there's another component, which is the movement element, which is the protected bike lane section, where we have cyclists going on the protected bike lane and vehicle on the road. The type of treatment really is in terms of speed reduction, or the traffic calming measure differs depending of where you look, where you consider those elements. In terms of the protected bike lane section that was built as part of stage 2A, we installed a speed cushion due to number of factors. One is the fact that the Archer and Star roundabout had a number of crashes, and we needed to reduce the speed using speed cushions and ensuring that vehicle can slow down, and that was achieved with the use of speed cushion. To improve the roads, to reduce the speed at this intersection. We really wanted to slow the speed. Whereas the ramps that are considered as part of portion A have a purpose to slow the speed, but as Natalie Adams mentioned, form part of an integrated project with the use of the raised plateau. So it's really two different type of treatment.
Thanks, Mr Check. Councillor Melrosa?
I guess that brings me to then focusing on that Star Street roundabout where there are raised platforms on one side, or one leg, two legs, but not the other legs, yet those legs are the legs that have speed bumps on them. So why then wouldn't all legs have the same treatment on it? And whether that's adjusting the heights or not, I don't know, but why wouldn't that be the case?
Ms Adams or Mr Check?
And just to add, I guess the point is then if that...
Councillor Melrosa, just in fairness, please just allow at the moment Ms Adams and Mr Check to have a discussion about that, and we can come back to your point in a minute. I just want to be fair to them. Ms Adams?
Thank you. So through the chair, it's a mixture of the concept design and the actual speeds that vehicles in our modelling and in our trials were travelling at. So again, as you can appreciate, it's much gentler going over the concrete speed humps, whereas the ones that are installed, the rubber ones, you do have to dramatically slow down. It was based on that.
Now, that might not help you, Councillor Melrosa, but it might lead to another question for you.
Well, I guess it does help, but then it doesn't answer why those particular legs that have those speed bumps get slowed down to almost a stop. I don't see how that's actually a functional way to operate at that roundabout. So why wouldn't the town just change the designs of those legs to suit those speeds rather than putting in a completely separate device? Therefore, then we keep that consistency in terms of speed measures.
Ms Adams?
Through the chair, that is one option, and there are design options in design of roundabout approaches where you can actually vary the approach by curving it and things like that, but that does require extra land take, and it's not consistent with the approach for the protected bike lanes that we were trying to achieve.
I wasn't suggesting that though, I was just...
Sorry, Councillor Melrosa, need to let Ms Adams finish. So just a reminder for elected members, we just need to be respectful as we can. I know that passions are risen about this and about trying to get it right. But Ms Adams, please finish, and then I'll come back to you, Councillor Melrosa.
So that was based on my understanding of Councillor Melrosa's question, but as to why we used different treatments and different interventions at the different locations.
Councillor Melrosa, is something you want to follow up as a question?
No.
All right, thank you. Are there any other questions from elected members about this particular item? Because we do need to enter into the debate phase for this item. So nobody's indicated that they've got any further questions about it. It's already been moved and seconded, but we've, I think, got to the stage where we bypassed, I think, any speaking to it because we had quite a few things that we needed to deal with. So, Councillor Cruiser, as the mover of the officer recommendation, did you wish to speak to this at this stage? All right, so not at this stage. Councillor Hamer, as the seconder, do you wish to be heard? No? In that case, I'm going to formally ask, is there any dissent to the officer's recommendation? There being no dissent, declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, next item on the agenda is, I'm sorry, is there some problem? Look, I know that elected members from time to time when matters are passed have observations that they wish to make, but please, if you can keep them till after the meeting, that would be appreciated. Next item on the agenda is item 14, the Chief Executive Officer reports. 14.1, 14.2 and 14.3 have all been dealt with by exception resolution. Item 15 is committee reports. We have none. Item 16, applications for leave of absence. I'll formally ask, are there any applications for leave of absence from elected members? No. Then we move on to item 17, motion of which previous notice has been given. We have received 2 notices of motion from 2 elected members. I'm going to deal with them in the order in which they appear in the agenda. 17.1, Deputy Mayor Ife, I understand you wish to present a motion to Council.
Thank you, Mayor Vernon. My motion is that Council appoints Councillor Peter Devereux to the Integrated Transport Strategy Working Group, in addition to the 3 elected members who have already been appointed. Would you like me to read my reason?
Yes, please.
The reason is Council initially agreed to appoint 3 elected members to the Integrated Transport Strategy Working Group. At the meeting in October to appoint these members, there was a tie between 2 elected members for the 3rd place on the group. Councillor Peter Devereux was the elected member who missed out on being appointed. This is an area of specific interest to Councillor Devereux and one where he has considerable experience. Adding him to the group reflects the work he has already undertaken on this topic and adds an additional experience voice to this new working group.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Ife. Can I seek a seconder, please, for Deputy Mayor Ife's motion? Seconded, Councillor Miles. Councillor Ife, do you wish to be heard substantively on your motion?
I have about 2 sentences. I absolutely believe that the existing members of the Integrated Transport Strategy Working Group are more than well qualified to carry out the work, and they will do a fantastic job. However, I also think that when we have elected members within our group that have specific interests and skills on a particular area, then we can shift the boundaries a little around to allow additional voices to be heard and additional contributions to be made. Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Ife. Councillor Miles, do you wish to be heard as the seconder? No. Formally ask, is there any dissent to the recommendation in the notice of motion? No, there being no dissent, declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 17.2, Councillor Anderson, you wish to present a motion to Council tonight?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mayor. That Council requests the Chief Executive Officer to provide a report to Council by February 2025, addressing the short, medium and long-term options for permitting residents to install play equipment on their street verge, including but not limited to consideration of. And also in point A, I would just like to make a small change as well in regards to getting feedback from the staff. It will read a temporary permits or verge use agreement to be granted by the town. B, temporary moratorium on the town action requiring removal of existing play equipment installed on any verge, pending further investigation of medium and long-term options. A pilot or trial project. D, a policy response. E, amending the town's relevant local laws.
Thanks, Councillor Anderson. With regards to the change in wording in point A that you just referred to, are you wanting to include the words verge use agreements as an addition, or are you wanting that to substitute one of the other words that's currently in there?
Yes, I would like it to substitute legal exemptions, please.
All right, thank you. So I think the note taker will have got that we're deleting the words legal exemptions and we're including the words instead verge use agreements as read out by Councillor Anderson.
Great. And
and if we could get you to set out your reasons for that, please.
Sure. This notice of motion is an opportunity to explore provisions that would enhance neighbourhood connections and make our public spaces more family friendly. Permitting play equipment on verges could foster community engagement, provide accessible play areas and offer spaces for families to connect near their homes.
Thanks, Councillor Anderson. Seeking a seconder for Councillor Anderson's motion, please.
I'm clicking like mad over here, but it's not registering.
Yeah, I was trying, but mine is saying, oh, now it's just popped to say that voting is open. Voting should have been. Yeah, mine's just refreshed to say that as well. Deputy Mayor Ife, you're registered as the seconder. So, seconded Deputy Mayor Ife. Councillor Anderson, do you wish to speak substantively to your motion?
Yes, just briefly. This came to my attention from a community member, and once I started looking into it further and looking at other properties within the town and play equipment on their verge, and then in consultation and conversation with the staff, trying to find a way around what can we do and what changes can we make and how do we go about this. So it stirred up lots of questions and investigation for me to then look at other councils, for example, the City of Vincent. They went through this in 2018. This year, the City of Stirling are going through something very similar, and they've been in the media about it as well. So I just think going forward and in regards to activating spaces and infill development, I think it would be a great asset to our spaces to investigate options that are safe and engaging and create connection within our community.
Thanks, Councillor Anderson. Deputy Mayor Ife is the seconder. Do you wish to be heard?
Thank you. Very briefly. In the town of Victoria Park, we do have a lot of people who live with very small gardens or with no gardens at all. Allowing for some play equipment to exist on verges allows for more play and more leisure. It also allows for better community connection. I know people who have trampolines on their verges, against the rules, and people enjoy spending time together with their neighbours, enjoying that experience. I also feel it improves our streetscapes. We lead to better looking streets and greater pride in our verges. We've actually moved on from every verge looking the same. The town of Victoria Park doesn't have every verge with perfect grass and one tree in the middle. We have sustainable verges. We have people who've done interesting things to their verges. I think this is just another step that we can take to improve the way that our streets look, to improve the connections between people and improve joy in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Devereux, you wish to be heard or you wish to ask a question? Yep.
I just had a question for Councillor Anderson. You mentioned the experience in 2 other local governments, but in your amendment you don't suggest consideration of that as part of your report, and I wondered whether you'd considered adding an extra item that would include existing experiences in other local governments that we might learn from.
Councillor Anderson?
I think at this stage, I tried to make the notice of motion broad to allow the staff to do the administrative side and investigate and look into what the other options are. And that's exactly what they'll be, bringing back. So, no, I think I'm happy at this stage to go with what's in the amendment and not, because are you asking that like a point F saying reflect on what other councils have achieved, or what is it that you're actually?
Well, that was what you referred to in your own speech, and that seems an obvious thing to draw on rather than reinvent the wheel. But if you'd rather not include it, then
Councillor Devereux, you were asking a question, and Councillor Anderson asked it. Do you have another question for her rather than making a statement? Do you have another question you want to ask her as a result of her answer? No? All right, thank you. I might direct a question to Ms Martin Good. In the course of the town addressing the request in Councillor Anderson's motion, assuming Council were to approve it, would the town give consideration and assessment to the experiences of other local governments and how they've addressed a similar problem? Ms Martin Good.
Through the Chair, we would ordinarily do that anyway for several reasons. Some of those reasons include that if some of those councils are further down the line in terms of their investigation of this matter, absolutely we would benefit from that. If they've got legal advice on that matter, we would also benefit from that also.
All right. Thanks, Ms Martin Good. Are there any other questions about this item? Councillor Miles.
I was just wondering, and maybe you did ask the staff already, but is February enough time? I guess just because of Christmas and January and things. I just feel like, I should ask the question.
Councillor Anderson?
Yes, it was the date of February was actually in line with conversations with the staff, and in fact it was their suggestion that February would give them enough time. Thank you.
All right, so I'm formally going to ask, is there any dissent? If there is, we'll move to debate. No, there being no dissent, declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ife and Councillor Anderson, for both of your interesting motions. Item 18 is questions from members without notice. Do we have any questions from members without notice? Councillor Hamer.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. I have a question about a question taken on notice from ABF. Following on what we learned tonight about Archer Street and speed bumps and humps and ramps, the answer in the report mentions that the desired speed for those new cushions on Archer Street is 30 kilometres per hour. Does that line up with what the average speeds are listed on the maps, being 50.1 and 47? And is the speed limit 50 or 60 on that part of Archer Street?
Could direct that question to Mr. Check.
Through the Chair, thank you for the question. So the current speed on Archer Street is 50 kilometers per hour. However, we're currently working with Main Roads via the submission of an application for speed limit reduction, which aims to reduce the speed. This is an activity that will be undertaken in the next couple of months, at least this financial year, to ensure that the speed, the posted speed limit in the town centre aligns with the intent of the project.
Thanks, Mr Check. Councillor Hamer?
Yes, just following on. I mean, it's my understanding that the locations of those two speed bumps are not in the town centre, and just reading from the RAC's website, they quote, "You must not drive at a speed less than 20 kilometres per hour of the gazetted speed zone. The exceptions are if there's traffic congestion or prevents you from driving." So if the speed limit is 50 and we're asking people to drive 30, does that create a problem for the actual speed they're supposed to be travelling?
Mr Check?
Through the Chair, thank you for the question. So we, as pointed out by Ms. Natalie Adams, we can't really control what the average speed will be, but our intent is really to reduce the speed in the town centre and to encourage more pedestrian activation. And one of the key element to achieve that is trying to reduce that speed to 30 kilometers per hour in the town centre.
Thanks, Mr Check. I think Councillor Hamer, did that answer your question?
I guess, but just to follow on, so there's the town's opinion that the 30 kilometre speed bumps outside of the town centre are required to slow people down to 30 kilometres in the town centre. Is that's correct?
Mr Check?
Through the Chair. So as mentioned previously, we have different type of traffic calming device, the rubber speed cushion along Archer Street in the protected bike lane section, which main focus is to slow the speed, especially around the Star and Archer roundabout, and then we have those so to achieve that speed reduction at the approach of the roundabout. And then we have those ramps in place to slow the speed well below that to 30 to ensure that vehicles slow down and give way in the future to pedestrian and cyclists, because as part of the, I guess, concept design, the town centre in the future will be a pedestrian focused zone where we'll have cyclists and pedestrian walking in that area. So it's very important to reduce that speed at this level to ensure that it's safe for those members of the public.
Okay, thanks, Mr Check. I think, Mr Doy, you indicated you might have some further information to provide that might assist Councillor Hamer.
The answer to your question is yes. So by putting in those speed humps to the approach, it's going to slow cars down on the way. So when they're getting to the town centre, they're going at an already slower speed, and then they'll arrive at that ramp in a much better position to continue at a slower speed. So the answer is to your question is yes.
And I think, Councillor Hamer, to your point about what's on, was it the RAC website that you were pointing out about the motorists are not to travel at more than 20 kilometres below the posted speed limit. If the posted speed limit changes from the 50 kilometres an hour that it is in all local residential streets, and then there's a posting for 30 kilometres, which the new signs would indicate it's now 30 kilometres at the speed hump. Once you go down to the 30 to follow the traffic sign, then it would be a further 20 below that before you would be in trouble with, say, the police claiming that you're going too slow. So that 30k environment would either bring people to 30k or potentially bring them below 30k. because they may know there's another hump coming up. There's no point increasing your speed between them. That would be my understanding of it. That may or may not help you.
Sure. And the other thing that was mentioned was the concept, was the 75mm speed bumps that have been installed recently in the concept plan that was adopted, or was that something that was added extra for those reasons?
Mr. Check, is that one that you can answer, given that the speed bumps that have been installed more recently that we've all heard a lot of feedback from our community about, I think they weren't originally intended to be in there, but they've been put in to try and drive the speed down. Is that right? Have I got that right?
Through Chair, yeah, it's correct. So we had what we call installed data loggers to monitor the speed and the traffic volume. And based on recent data, we found out that the 85th percentile was well above the 50 kilometers per hour. And to reduce that speed below 50, we had to consider the appropriate measures in place. Yes, that's the reason why we had the speed cushion in place, the rubber speed cushion on that section.
Councillor Hamer, anything further? No? Any other questions from elected members without notice? Councillor Melrosa.
One very high level one, because I'll put the rest in writing, but what process would need to take place to change or modify the scope in the Archer Mint project, whether that be in the upcoming phase or the next future one, to go back to the last stage of the project and remove the bolt-on speed bumps and replace them with speed devices that are consistent with other measures being deployed on Archer Mint?
Mr. Check.
Through the Chair, yeah, we'll probably have to go through a design process considering the cost implication, the maintenance, and we'll also have to monitor the effectiveness of those measures. So what we're doing at the moment is we've done a number of control. I would say we monitor the speed along Archer Street since we installed the speed cushion. Before changing any traffic calming devices, whether it's a rubber speed cushion to an asphalt one, we need to understand the effectiveness and consider speed, but also other parameters such as cost and maintenance before making a decision. So we'll have to, I guess, assess that internally. But it's possible, yeah.
All right. Thanks, Mr. Check. Can I just ask a quick question of the acting CEO? Noting Councillor Melrosa's question and Mr. Check's answers, is there a way that there can be a review of the Archer Mint Streetscape improvement plan at what is coming close to, perhaps I'll call it, for want of a better expression, the midway point in the life of that plan before the next stage? And if so, do you know what the options could be for that, completely separate to an operational internal review, which I've no doubt goes on a regular basis? Mr. CEO.
Yes, thanks, Mayor Vernon. Yes, a review is entirely possible, but in terms of the process in which that would occur and timeframes and so on, I'd like to take that on notice and provide a detailed answer. I think that's something that we should think about carefully.
All right, thank you. We'll take that on notice, and I'm sure the Minute Secretary will note that down. Any other questions from elected members without notice? No? All right, thank you. Item 19 on the agenda is new business of an urgent nature introduced by decision of the meeting. We have none. Item 20 on the agenda is public question time, which I now open at 9:47 p.m. and noting that there are no members of the public remaining in the gallery, I close public question time at 9:47 p.m. Item 21 is public statement time, which I now open at 9:48 p.m. and noting no members of the public in the gallery, close it at 9:48 p.m. Item 22, meeting closed to the public. We have no matters for which the meeting may be closed to the public. And so at 9:48 p.m, I will close the meeting officially. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, elected members, town staff, and those who joined us tonight, including those on live streaming. We're adjourned. Good evening.